Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. President Trump makes a major announcement on the war against terror and reads an unexpected letter from Ukrainian President Zelensky. Highlights from his speech to a joint session of Congress. Illegal immigrant encounters are way down, but borders are. Tom Homan says more funds and facilities are needed. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance heads to Eagle Pass. Mayors of Boston, Chicago, Denver, and New York City will testify before Congress today. The focus is on the city's immigration problems and their status as sanctuary cities.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good morning. Today is Wednesday, March 5th. I'm Don Ma. The Supreme Court ruled today that the Trump administration must resume payments to foreign aid organizations for work they've already done. The High Court's 5-4 decision upholds an order to release funding for contractors at the U.S. Agency for International Development and the State Department. Aid organizations said in a Supreme Court filing they would face extraordinary and irreversible harm if the funding freeze continues. President Trump is pursuing what he called an America First agenda, ordering a 90-day pause on all foreign aid on his first day back in office. Trump and Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk continue to search for and cut what they say is waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. President Donald Trump marked the end of his first 6 weeks in office with a 1 hour and 40-minute speech to a joint session of Congress, the longest such address on record. The previous record, set by President Bill Clinton in 2000, was 1 hour and 28 minutes. Trump declared America is back as he opened his speech and said the American dream is surging bigger and better than ever before. While the first joint address of a president's term is not officially a State of the Union, it serves a similar purpose. And staying with President Trump's speech to a joint session of Congress, Trump tackled tariffs, international cooperation on energy, the fight against terror, and the war in Ukraine. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the key takeaways.
The President of the United States.
President Trump called for an end to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, making a direct appeal for peace.
It's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war.
Trump called out Europeans for what he sees as not pulling their weight.
Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine, by far.
The president said he received a letter from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier in the day, stating Ukraine is ready to negotiate for lasting peace.
He said, "My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts."
Zelensky also signaled Ukraine's willingness to sign agreements on minerals and security.
Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful?
The president also tackled energy, highlighting international cooperation on a major energy initiative.
My administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each.
South Korea's industry minister confirmed Tuesday that Seoul and Washington will form a working group to discuss the pipeline, energy, shipbuilding, tariffs, and trade barriers. Turning to trade, Trump reaffirmed his commitment to tariffs, saying they will boost foreign investment in the U.S. and reduce the trade deficit.
Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries.
He said reciprocal tariffs will be imposed on any nation that levies fees on American products.
Countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair.
A series of tariffs, including 25% fees on goods from Canada and Mexico, and 20% in addition to those already imposed on China, took effect on Tuesday, and reciprocal tariffs are set to take effect on April 2nd.
Whatever they tax us, we will tax them. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer.
While critics warn tariffs could fuel inflation, Trump dismissed those concerns, calling any impact temporary. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said tariff negotiations with Canada and Mexico hinge on addressing the fentanyl crisis, with an announcement expected as early as Wednesday.
Fentanyl deaths in America need to come down, right? It's black and white.
China responded sharply to the new tariffs, with a spokesperson posting on X, "If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end." Moving on to the fight against terrorism, Trump also made a major announcement regarding the 2021 Abbey Gate bombing in Afghanistan that killed 13 U.S. service members.
Tonight, I am pleased to announce that we have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice.
Officials have identified the senior member of the branch of the ISIS terror group based in Afghanistan as Mohammed Sharifullah. Trump said Sharifullah was turned over to U.S. authorities by Pakistan. From a major energy project to Ukraine peace talks, Trump's address signals significant change ahead. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And a new development in the bomb attack in Kabul, Afghanistan, that killed 13 American service members. The Department of Justice said Mohammed Sharifullah has been charged with helping plan the 2021 attack. The department added that a hearing is scheduled at a federal court in Virginia later today. And the Trump administration says more funding is needed to support its crackdown on illegal immigration. Border Czar Tom Homan said yesterday that additional resources, including more detention beds, enforcement tools, and deportation flights, are essential. Homan acknowledged the cost is significant, but called it a one-time expense. He contrasted the cost with ongoing taxpayer-funded services like education and healthcare for illegal immigrants. The number of encounters with illegal immigrants at the U.S.-Mexico border has dropped sharply since Trump entered the Oval Office. Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit Eagle Pass today to assess the Texas-Mexico border. Vance will be the highest-ranking official to travel to the border town under Trump's current administration. He'll be joined by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Now, mayors from Boston, Chicago, Denver, and New York City are set to testify at a House committee hearing on sanctuary cities. The cities often have policies that aren't in line with federal immigration enforcement. Let's tune in.
Cities continue to endanger American communities and the safety of federal immigration enforcement officers. Today, Mayors Wu, Johnson, Johnston, and Adams will be publicly accountable for their failure to follow the law and protect the American people. President Trump and his administration are taking action against sanctuary cities, and Congress must follow, not by allowing a single penny of federal funding to go to cities and states that prioritize criminal aliens over the American people. I now yield to Ranking Member Conley for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every member here today, Democrats and Republicans alike, agrees that violent criminals don't belong in our communities. We all want our cities to be safe and have zero tolerance for violent crime, irrespective of the status of the perpetrator. Where we disagree is that my Republican colleagues prefer a selective application of the law to shield the President of the United States from accountability and this administration from the rule of law itself. In America, we uphold the rule of law, independent from partisan politics, without fear or favor. Betraying those convictions, President Trump's Department of Justice has tried to force the conditional dismissal of very serious charges against one of our witnesses here today, in exchange for that witness's total and complete submission to the radical immigration agenda being propounded by the administration. And the DOJ has done so over the objections of a Republican acting U.S. attorney whom President Trump appointed. Rather than enabling a flagrant corrupt and quid pro quo, 7 federal prosecutors, 7, including Republicans, resigned. One of them, a former clerk to Chief Justice John Roberts of the Supreme Court, said that anyone in his position, quote, would know that our laws and traditions do not allow using the prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials, in this way. History is calling on us now to stand up for those laws and traditions. Doing so also demands an affirmation of state and local sovereignty in determining the most effective ways to keep residents safe in compliance with federal law. To deny this sovereignty is an assault on the independence of every American city across the country. Today, Republicans have hauled before us the mayors of 4 major American cities to frame them as lawless because those cities have some limits on how intrusively and aggressively their own officials can conduct federal immigration operations and responsibilities. Let's be clear. The state and local laws that Republicans have issue with today are in full compliance with federal law. They do not obstruct ICE from carrying out its duties, and they are backed by evidence demonstrating that they keep people safe and safer in counties with laws that do not honor extrajudicial civil detainers and had significantly lower levels of violent crime than counties that have them. Mayors, police chiefs, sheriffs, and local leaders have made clear that the way to combat violent crime is allowing local police to do their local job of ensuring public safety in their own communities as they account for it. Commandeering them to spend limited time and resources as federal agents is a non-starter and can contribute to crime and non-cooperation in immigrant communities throughout the country. At this year's Conservative Political Action Conference, Border Czar Tom Homan said he is, quote, bringing hell to the city of Boston until it complies with his demands. I don't know what that means. Boston is my hometown, and I'm glad to welcome our mayor, Mayor Wu, and her 1-month-old baby here today. But I don't know that Boston welcomes Mr. Homan or anyone else bringing hell to the city. The Republican crusade against local independence doesn't just undermine public safety in our communities. It is blatantly cruel, and I say inhumane and un-American. Kenya Colindres, her husband Wilson Rogelio Velasquez Cruz, and their 3 children came to the United States in 2022 seeking asylum, a legal category of immigration, after escaping violence in Honduras. Wilson was granted a 5-year work permit, allowing him to work at a tire shop and to provide for his family here in the United States. Kenya said that her husband had never been in trouble and was, quote, a man of God. On January 26, the family of 5 was in church when Wilson was lured out by an ICE agent waiting to arrest him. Despite having valid work permits, the Trump administration refused to hear his appeal and is actively deporting him. Wilson was the sole breadwinner for his family. Now Kenya has to worry about how she's going to pay the bills and take care of her 3 children, on top of the fears that she and her children might be next. Last week in El Monte, California, Sitley, a woman who was battling bone cancer, tearfully watched as her mother, Yolanda, cried inconsolably as she was detained by ICE agents who refused to even present the detention order. Yolanda was Sitley's sole caretaker in her struggle against cancer and has no criminal record. And now Sitley is on her own. ICE is also conducting massive raids in cities and towns that have led to the wrongful detention of U.S. citizens, including Native Americans and military veterans. One school district sent a letter to parents warning that ICE may board school buses and demand documents from children. Children are going to be afraid to go to school. One reportedly wrote a goodbye note to friends saying, quote, if ICE takes me, don't forget about me. If ICE takes me, don't forget about me. From a child. Is that the country we want? America needs immigration policies that keep everyone safe and make the country stronger and allow us to grow and fill in the skill sets we don't have. If President Trump was serious about delivering those solutions, he would not be attacking the Constitution's guarantee of citizenship to children born in the United States. To see our country through this period of darkness, we need leaders who will stand up for the rule of law and will champion public safety at the local level. And American families, whether they're immigrant families or native-born families, deserve due process, deserve respect, and deserve that Statue of Liberty that welcomes all comers. I yield back.
Ranking member yields back. I request unanimous consent that Representatives LaHood of Illinois, LaLota of New York, Crank of Colorado, Malatakis of New York, Hurd of Colorado, Evans of Colorado, Van Dyne of Texas, Ocasio-Cortez of New York, Gillen of New York, and Davis of Illinois be waived onto today's hearing for the purpose of asking questions. Without objection, so ordered. And now, before we introduce the witnesses, I recognize Mr. Higgins from Louisiana for 20 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the ranking member as well. Just to briefly, respectfully recognize the presence of the family of Wesley Haynes, a constituent. I'll speak to his case in my time, Mr. Chairman, but his parents, Patrick and Kathy, his wife, Olivia, his little brother, Brady, are present today, and they have a hard exit soon. Their 4-month-old daughter, Anne Marie, is waiting at home for Olivia to care for. And I just respectfully acknowledge their presence, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Ranking Member. We will discuss the details of their case. They tragically lost Wesley Haynes last year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to recognize this beautiful American family.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. I'm very pleased today to welcome our outstanding witness panel, the mayors of 4 major American cities. First, we have Mayor Eric Adams, who's the outstanding mayor of New York City. He was sworn into office on January 1st, 2022. We have Mayor Mike Johnson, who's the mayor of the city and county of Denver. He was sworn into office on July 17th, 2023. I now recognize Representative Krista Morte from Illinois for 1 minute to introduce our next witness.
Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to introduce Brandon Johnson, mayor of the greatest city in the world, namely Chicago, a city that was built by generations of immigrants, people like my parents and myself. Mayor Johnson was raised in Elgin, Illinois, which I'm proud to represent in Congress. The mayor was one of 10 children born to Andrew and Wilma Jean Johnson. His parents inspired him to become a teacher in the Chicago Public Schools and then later to run for office. Mayor Johnson won his first race for Cook County Commissioner in 2018 and later became mayor of Chicago in 2023. Mayor Johnson has dedicated his life to public service, and I'm pleased to welcome my fellow Illinoisan to the United States House of Representatives and to the Oversight Committee. Welcome, Mayor.
I now recognize Representative Presley from Massachusetts for 1 minute to introduce our next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm proud to introduce Mayor Michelle Wu, a dedicated leader committed to making Boston a welcoming home for everyone, and the first woman and person of color to be elected mayor of the city of Boston. For over a decade, I've had the privilege of working alongside Mayor Wu and witnessing her dedication to public service firsthand. She leads with compassion, she is innovative and inclusive. Under her leadership, Boston has become the safest major city in America, a city that is welcoming to families from all walks of life. Just weeks ago, she welcomed her newest family member, baby Mira, who is with us today, a beautiful reminder of the future she's working to build. Madam Mayor, I am grateful for your partnership, friendship, and leadership. Thank you for being here.
Gentlelady yields back. And finally, we're also joined by Mr. David Beer, who is the Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute. Mr. Beer is the minority witness here today. I want to thank you all again for joining us, and I look forward to our discussion this afternoon. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you all. You may take a seat. We, again, appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Now, let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement, and they will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statement to 5 minutes, and we're going to limit our questions to 5 minutes, and that's going to be enforced today, and that's for both sides, As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Mayor Adams for his opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Oklahoma, Ranking Member Connolly, and members of the committee. As mayor of New York City and a former police officer for 22 years, keeping New Yorkers safe is my top priority, and it has been our administration's North Star. When I entered this role, my job was to help our city recover from the negative effects of COVID. Most importantly, to bring down crime. As a result, overall crime was down across New York City last year, and we have now had 3 straight months of double-digit declines in major crimes. I'm here today to testify on how New York City can continue to reduce crime, even as a sanctuary city. To be clear, a sanctuary city classification does not mean our city will ever be a safe haven for violent criminals. It also does not give New York City the authority to violate federal immigration laws. To the contrary, New York City will always comply with city, state, and federal laws as it does now. Law-abiding immigrants in New York have an important role. Immigrant New Yorkers, including those who are undocumented, pay billions of dollars in taxes and contribute billions more in spending power to our economy. Immigrants also play a vital role in the functioning of the city. This was on full display during the COVID-19 pandemic. The various immigrant residents of our city worked to keep the city moving, while many other New Yorkers were able to shelter in place and work remotely. Hospitals, the food industry, and many other businesses were able to function because of the commitment of our immigrant population. As mayor, I do not control who enters or remains in our country, but I do have to manage the population that is within our city. In order to carry out this function without having long-term negative ramification, I must create an atmosphere that allows every law-abiding resident, documented or not, to access vital services without fear of being turned over to federal authorities. I cannot have a city where parents are afraid to send their children to school or where children are sleeping on the streets, creating the potential for child exploitation and sex trafficking. If an undocumented person refuses to seek medical care until they have a medical emergency, our city's healthcare system will be strained. And if an undocumented individual witnesses a crime but is afraid to call 911 for fear of being turned over to federal authorities, criminals will roam free. And it reminds me of my early days as a police officer. I have seen firsthand the damage that can be done when someone is too afraid to seek out the police. Early in my career, I responded to a man who was calling out for help. We caught the suspect, but when it came to filling out the police report, the individual, an undocumented man from China, said he did not want to file a report and put a target on his back with federal immigration authorities. Approximately 4 decades later, our country still is in desperate need of comprehensive immigration reform. And as a result, New York City was hit with the largest humanitarian crisis in our city's history over the last 3 years. Federal law did not allow me to stop buses from entering New York City. State law required me to provide all in our city with housing and meals and to educate children. City law makes it unlawful to collaborate with ICE for civil enforcement. We complied with all of these legal requirements and still manage the humanitarian crisis with the care and compassion, while at the same time bringing down crime, recovering our economy, and preventing any child from being forced to sleep on the streets. Comprehensive immigration reform is long overdue. While the solution is not within my control as a mayor, I am committed to working with federal officials to go after violent gangs and those who harm residents of our city. This is why we have over 330 NYPD officers assigned to different federal joint task forces, over 70 of which are assigned to task forces with Homeland Security investigation, the criminal investigation arm of ICE. Those task forces focus on many different important priorities, including going after violent gangs and child exploitation. I look forward to sharing New York City collaborations that we do daily with our city, state, and federal partners to keep New York City to continue to be the safest big city in America. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Denver Mayor Johnston for his opening statement.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for inviting me to testify today. This committee convened this hearing on the critical topic of immigration. I want to tell you Denver's story. When I became mayor 20 months ago, Denver was already receiving buses of immigrants with little to no notice or coordination. At one point, we were receiving 10 to 11 buses a day, dropping off as many as 300 people, mostly women and children, in 10-degree weather with only sandals and a T-shirt, leaving them in danger of freezing to death on our streets. All told, 42,000 people arrived in Denver over 18 months, the largest per capita influx of any city in America. We are each entitled to our own opinion about what should happen at the border, but that was not the question facing Denver. The question Denver faced was, what will you do with a mom and 2 kids dropped on the streets of our city with no warm clothes, no food, and no place to stay? As mayor, I have to protect the health and safety of everyone in our city. As a man of faith, I have a moral obligation to care for those in need. As Scripture says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in." So that's what we did. In Denver, we believe our problems are solvable, and we are the ones to solve them. So we went to work. When we started, we had the largest encampment in Denver history, with more than 200 migrant families living in freezing temperatures. So we opened 8 different city shelters housing 5,000 people. City employees volunteered to take extra shifts, and Denver residents stepped up, making meals, donating clothes, furniture, school supplies. Some even welcomed families into their own homes. We helped 8,700 eligible individuals apply for work authorization so they could put food on their own table, pay their own rent, and reduce the strain on public resources. As a result, a year later, there is not a single migrant encampment left in the city. We have closed all of our shelters. We have connected people to jobs and housing, and the city's immigrant support budget has dropped by nearly 90%. And in the midst of this, migrants did not bring a wave of crime to Denver. In fact, crime went down. Homicides dropped 17%, shooting victims dropped 24%, auto theft down 29%. America is not just a place, it's a belief. Some people are born into it. Some fight their whole life to get to it. It's a belief that all are created equal. It's a belief that it doesn't matter where you came from if you're willing to fight hard enough. Julian Becerra's parents believed that. So they brought him to this country from Mexico when he was 10. They taught him respect, and they taught him to love and serve his community. As an adult, he decided the most honorable way to serve his community was in uniform. So he enlisted in the Air Force. Then he served as a sheriff, then finally as a police officer, where he served with distinction until one day he was pursuing a criminal on a dangerous bridge and fell to his death. In the midst of the immigration crisis, I attended the Fallen Officers Memorial as I watched officers hand Officer Becerra's 10-year-old daughter a folded American flag. I watched her cry as she wrapped her little arms around that flag and holded it tight the way she wished she could hold her dad, but never will again. For the rest of her life, she will cherish that flag, that American flag, because it is the country that her dad loved, it is the country he chose, it is the country he served, it is the country he gave his life for. So if we want to tell the story of what impact immigrants have in America, we must tell the full story. That story must acknowledge that this country is lucky to have people like Julian Becerra, who love this country enough to risk their lives to keep us safe, to keep all of us safe. When buses started showing up filled with migrants, some in my city were afraid, just like I'm sure some of your constituents are afraid. They were afraid about crime and homelessness and worried about what these new people might take away from them. I understand that fear. And the truth is, people who are new to this country do good and bad just like all of us. But there's another truth. When those buses kept on coming, Denver made a choice as a city, not to hate each other, but to help each other. Not to turn on each other, but to turn to each other. And see if together we could solve a problem that felt bigger than any one of us. And that's what we did. It wasn't perfect, and it required sacrifice from all of us. But in the end, Denver came out stronger and closer than we were before. Because Americans expect us to do more than point fingers. They expect us to solve problems. So if Denver can find a way to put aside our ideological differences long enough to manage a crisis we didn't choose or create, it seems only fair to ask that the body that is actually charged with solving this national problem, this Congress, can finally commit to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize Chicago Mayor Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Comer. Thank you to the ranking member Karoline and to the members of this committee. I have the great privilege and honor of serving as mayor of the city of Chicago, the third largest city in the nation. Established by a Black Haitian man and a Potawatomi woman, Chicago is and always has been a proud city of immigrants. Generations of new arrivals, including the descendants of the enslaved during the Great Migration, created a vibrant city where 1 in 5 residents is foreign-born. Each day, I wake up to serve every one of Chicago's 77 unique neighborhoods and those who live in our great city. As mayor of Chicago, nothing is more important to me than the safety and well-being of all residents. And since I was elected, my administration has been laser-focused on creating and implementing public safety initiatives that protect all Chicagoans. We launched the People's Plan for Community Safety, which builds trust between communities and law enforcement by prioritizing transparency and violence intervention. We established a dedicated robbery task force that reduced robberies by 25% citywide. We added over 200 detectives, increasing the clearance rates on our cases. And we've updated police equipment and technology so that our police officers have the tools they need to effectively prevent and fight crime. Our efforts to improve public safety by building trust with and investing in our communities are working. Violent crime is down in Chicago. The city ended 2024 with its lowest homicide rate in 5 years. The city is also safer because of our Welcoming City Ordinance. That law makes sure that the city's police resources are focused on our local priorities. In fact, the 40 years of Chicago's leaders have recognized that our policies toward civil immigration matters help to prevent and solve crimes. Put simply, any actions that amplify fears of deportations make Chicago more dangerous. Those fears cause witnesses and victims to avoid cooperating with police. The cooperation of all people, regardless of their immigration status, is essential to achieving the city's goals of reducing crime and pursuing justice for victims. When there is trust between city's residents and the police, undocumented immigrants come forward to report crimes to local law enforcement and provide information that helps the police solve those crimes. And now, I know there are myths about these laws, but we must not let mischaracterizations and fear-mongering obscure the reality that Chicago's crime rates are trending down. We still have a long way to go, but sensationalizing tragedy in the name of political expediency is not governing, it's grandstanding. Every violent crime is devastating, but scapegoating entire communities is not only misleading, it is unjust and it is beneath us. So let me be clear. Chicago's Welcoming City Ordinance and our other laws and policies do not lead to more crime. They do not prevent cooperation with federal law enforcement on criminal matters. And we do not harbor criminals. We arrest them, often because of laws that allow residents to feel safe helping the police. As mayor, I'm building a Chicago that embodies the dream of my father had when he came from Salis, Mississippi during the second migration, a Chicago that invests in housing, healthcare, jobs, and education. And that's why we've increased safe and stable housing by adding almost 4,000 more units, expanded access to healthcare by opening 3 mental health centers, and focused on getting our young people well-paying jobs, with summer jobs increasing by 45% since I've taken office. Our local partnerships have built a solid foundation, a better, stronger, and a much safer Chicago. We need this body's support for these efforts. We are ready to partner with you on the measures we know promote trust and create sustainable public safety. And to the people of Chicago, and all hardworking people across this great nation. These values are our North Star, the drinking gourd we follow to a better future. We will not live in fear. It is not our portion. We will not go back. I do look forward to answering the questions of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Boston Mayor Wu for her opening statement.
Thank you. Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Connolly, and members of the committee, my name is Michelle Wu. I am the daughter of immigrants, and since November of 2021, I have had the honor of serving as mayor of Boston. I'm proud to be here on behalf of our city, the police officers, first responders, city workers, the faith leaders, teachers, parents, and neighbors who partner every day to make Boston the safest major city in the nation. And I'm proud every day to work alongside the greatest police commissioner in the nation, Commissioner Michael Cox. Every year since I took office, we've set a new record low for gun violence in Boston. Last year, Boston saw the fewest homicides on record in the last 70 years. Those are the facts. And behind these record lows are historic highs. The most ever young people working paid summer jobs, the most pre-K seats at no cost to families, the most affordable housing built in a generation. We have invested in the kinds of opportunities that cultivate prosperity and eradicate crime. And the laws on our books promote the kind of community trust that keeps all of us safe. In Boston, our police department resources and taxpayer dollars go towards preventing and solving crimes. And when it comes to criminal matters, the Boston Police partner every day with state and federal law enforcement. But Massachusetts state law and the Boston Trust Act make clear that immigration is federal law enforcement's responsibility. We are the safest major city in the country because our gun laws are the strongest in the nation, because our officers have built relationships over decades, and because all of our residents can trust that when they call 911 in the event of an emergency or to report a crime, help will come. This federal administration's approach is undermining that trust. In the past month, I've met with residents and faith leaders in community centers and places of worship, asking my constituents what they want Congress to know. And what I heard over and over again was fear and frustration. I spoke with pastors whose pews are half empty on Sundays, doctors whose patients are missing appointments, teachers whose students aren't coming to class, neighbors afraid to report crimes in their communities, and victims of violence who won't call the police. This federal administration is making hardworking, tax-paying, God-fearing residents afraid to live their lives. A city that's scared is not a city that's safe. A land ruled by fear is not the land of the free. Next month, Boston will celebrate 250 years of our nation's freedom. And in every one of those years, Boston has welcomed the world to our shores. From the English immigrants fleeing religious persecution, to the Irish forced out by famine, to the families from Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Cabo Verde, Vietnam, and so many more who call Boston home today. We are the safest major city in the nation. We are home to the greatest healthcare, the greatest colleges and universities, the most advanced innovators, and the 2024 world champion Boston Celtics. We are the cradle of democracy and the city of champions. We are all of these things not in spite of our immigrants, but because of them. 1 in 7 signers of the Declaration of Independence were immigrants. On the last 4 Red Sox rosters to win a World Series, 1 in 5 were immigrants. Of all the faculty at Boston University to have earned a Nobel Prize, all but 1 were immigrants. Today, 1 in 4 Boston residents were born somewhere else. Most have jobs, many have kids. All of them chose this country as their home because, like my mom and dad, they believe that here, where you've been doesn't limit where you're going. The strength of your character has nothing to do with the color of your passport. and how hard you work matters more than where you were born. That wherever you're from, if you pitch in, look out for your neighbors, and cheer for the home team, you can build a better future here for the people you love. So to every one of my neighbors back in Boston, know this: you belong here. This is your home. Boston es tu hogar. Boston, 是la calle. 这是你的家. This is our city. We are the safest major city in the nation because we are safe for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Beer for his opening statement.
Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Connolly, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. The Cato Institute's half-century of independent research demonstrates that people of all races, religions, and birthplaces can thrive in a free society. Liberty must be protected, both from over-intrusive government and from private violence. Unfortunately, the president's chaotic, indiscriminate deportation plan does the opposite. It harms public safety, threatens Americans' rights, and undermines the successful integration of America's immigrants into its society and economy. The president's first action was to rescind the requirement that ICE target public safety threats first. He has ordered that millions of vetted immigrants be stripped of lawful status and deported. He is even attempting to deport the U.S.-born children of people without permanent status. This flagrantly unconstitutional act effectively orders a series of crimes, wrongful arrest and imprisonment, civil rights violations, and unlawful deprivation of voting rights. Never before in American history has a president sought the power to strip potentially tens of millions of Americans of their constitutional rights. The president is also explicitly asserting the authority to ignore any law passed by you, Congress, that provides due process for people accused of being in the country illegally. The administration has repeatedly misled you and the public about who it is targeting, stating it would focus on public safety threats, that only the worst of the worst would be sent to Guantanamo Bay, and that every person it had arrested had a criminal record. We now know that most ICE arrests since the inauguration have been of people without a criminal record. Indeed, he is arresting people who entered legally, never violated any law, and sending them to Guantanamo Bay prison. It is no surprise in this lawless environment that many people and many cities simply do not trust the federal government on immigration. That is a problem. But under our Constitution, states determine their policies. Congress cannot force them. It must reestablish trust. Unfortunately, some members of Congress want to force an indiscriminate policy of mass deportation on the entire country with no public safety focus. If Congress wants more cooperation, it should address the concerns of these cities. What Congress should do is reestablish trust. Indiscriminate mass deportation agenda is a far greater threat to public safety than any city policy. A mountain of empirical research shows that reasonable restrictions on ICE cooperation do not increase crime rates, and that immigrants lower crime rates. Immigrants, including illegal immigrants, commit crimes serious enough for them to be incarcerated at half the rate of U.S.-born Americans. Data from Texas shows that illegal immigrants are 36% less likely to commit and be convicted of murder. At least before this current mass deportation effort, immigrants were more likely to report crimes than U.S.-born Americans. Don't jeopardize that. Mass deportation is diverting law enforcement resources away from obtaining justice for victims. Indeed, it even targets the victims. Sabotaging local economies and obliterating communities will not restore public safety. It will make us poor while increasing the crime rate and victimization rate for Americans. There is a better approach. We don't need chaos and disorder of illegal immigration or of mass deportation. Why don't people come legally? Because Congress has provided so few options for them to do so, not updating its laws in the last 3.5 decades. Just 3% of those applying for permanent legal status in 2024 received it. That's the failed policy. Let peaceful immigrants pay to get vetted, work, and contribute legally. And let law enforcement at all levels focus on keeping Americans safe. Thank you.
All right, our witnesses have concluded their opening statements. We're going to begin with questions from members, and I want to remind the members we have 60 members today that are going to ask questions. So I'm going to strictly enforce the 5 minutes. I'll hit the gavel if anyone's still talking, and we'll allow the witnesses to answer the question. But let's please be mindful. We have a lot of questioners today for this very important hearing, and again, we thank the witnesses. I'll recognize myself to begin questions for 5 minutes, and I have limited time, so I want to start with a simple yes or no question, and I'm going to hold you all to that because after the first question, then we'll allow for a little more time. But Mayor Johnston, in 2017, Denver prohibited city officials, including corrections officers, from assisting and cooperating with any investigation, detention, or arrest procedures related to federal immigration laws. The city also stated that federal immigration authorities shall not be granted access or allowed to use the secure areas of any city or county jail. Mayor Johnston, is Denver a sanctuary city?
A lot of folks use that term.
Yes or no?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Folks use that term differently. I can tell you what Denver does. We do not.
Okay, I take that as a yes. Mayor Johnson, no, yes or no? I take that as a yes. Mayor Johnson, on March 10th, 2023, you posted on X that Chicago must lead and live by the promise to be a sanctuary city. Is Chicago a sanctuary city?
A 40-year policy of being a welcoming city.
Yes.
A 40-year policy of a welcoming
yes.
city.
Mayor Wu, in November 2024, you gave an interview noting that you served on the city council a decade ago when the Boston Trust Act was first passed. You said in that interview that in terms of Boston's policy, there is a prohibition on resources and personnel going to enforce civil immigration detainers, meaning Boston police and other departments cannot cooperate with ICE when it comes to detaining on civil warrants. Mayor, is Boston a sanctuary city?
Boston is a safe city.
I take that as a yes. And Mayor Adams, on November 12, 2024, you said, quote, "This is a sanctuary city," but I must comment that you have, of the witnesses today of the major cities, you have publicly stated that you were willing to work with ICE on detaining the most criminal illegals, and I want to publicly thank you for that. But my question to you, sir, is New York City a sanctuary city?
Based on our classification. Based on our classification, yes.
Okay. Last year, in a Boston suburb, an illegal alien raped and impregnated his 14-year-old daughter while living in a shelter for illegal aliens. Mayor Wu, under Boston law, would you turn this criminal over to ICE on a detainer?
Whenever there's a criminal warrant, Boston police enforce that and hold people accountable.
So would you turn that criminal over to ICE?
This happened outside the city of Boston, but I can tell you in the city, whenever someone commits a crime, whenever there's a criminal warrant, we hold them accountable. If ICE deems that they are dangerous enough to obtain a criminal warrant, and the Boston police will enforce it.
Will you turn that criminal over to ICE?
We follow the laws, and we make sure that everyone...
In Chicago, an illegal alien who is a suspected member of a violent foreign gang who was brought into custody for his potential involvement in a murder. He was released when Cook County declined to press charges. This illegal alien is also facing charges for kidnapping and sexually assaulting his former girlfriend last year. Now he's on the streets. Mayor Johnson, under Chicago law, would you turn this criminal over to ICE on a detainer?
Our local law enforcement works hard every day to get criminals off the streets of Chicago.
Would you turn that criminal over to ICE? That's the problem. That's one of the topics of this conversation. That's one of the problems we've heard from Tom Hammond and from the Homeland Security is that in your cities, when someone's apprehended for a crime and ICE is now with this new federal policy wanting to come in and deport the criminal alien that you will not cooperate with ICE? Will you turn that criminal over to ICE?
And we do not harbor criminals. Our local police department works hard every single day to ensure that the city of Chicago is
Yes
safe.
or no? Will you turn the criminal over to ICE?
With a criminal warrant from the federal government, our local law enforcement repeatedly collaborates with federal agents.
So you're saying publicly today, you will turn that alien over to ICE in a safe place like a jail and not turn him out on the street and say, here you go, ICE, good luck. You will turn that criminal over to ICE.
With a criminal warrant, as we have done for 40 years.
Should that criminal be turned over to ICE?
With a criminal warrant, they are subject to the federal laws, and that includes deportation.
My time has expired, but again, the point that we've got to iron out today is that we have to have cooperation. It is federal law to turn over those illegal criminals to ICE. And we have heard reports, and many of you have said publicly, that you are going to obstruct that. That is against the law, and we're going to hear more about that today. Now I recognize the ranking member, Connolly, for his 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mayor Wu, I quoted Tom Homan, the so-called border czar, saying that he wanted to bring hell. He was bringing hell to the city of Boston. What did you understand him to mean by that?
Let's talk about Tom Homan. Shame on him for lying about my city, for having the nerve to insult our police commissioner who has overseen the safest Boston's been in anyone's lifetime. Bring him here under oath, and let's ask him some questions. I am here to make sure that the city of Boston is safe. Others may want to bring hell. We are here to bring peace to cities everywhere.
Mayor Johnston of Denver, what would your reaction be if Tom Homan wants to bring hell to your city, Denver?
We think that we have folks in Denver who are working hard, playing by the rules, paying taxes. There is no one that is seeking hell to come to Denver. What people are looking for is opportunity and hope.
And for the record, he can do whatever he wants to do, I guess. But the fact of the matter is you absorbed on a per capita basis the largest immigration a year or two ago, and you indicated that your crime rate actually fell. It didn't increase. Is that correct?
That is correct. Crime is down in Denver. We have homicides down 17%. Violent shootings are down 24%.
And in Boston, I'm sorry, I've got limited time. Mayor Wu, same thing in Boston. The Boston crime rate has been falling, correct?
We had 24 homicides last year, 24 too many, but that represented a tremendous reduction, one of the biggest drops anywhere in the country.
Thank you. So the correlation between immigration and crime is false, as you point out, Mr. Beer. Perhaps you can elaborate that. I find it ironic that you characterized correctly, in my view, President Trump and Tom Homan's approach to immigration as lawless when they're invoking law and order and crime as the rationale for their lawlessness. Could you expand on the lawlessness and the irony of the fact that, as you point out in your testimony, the crime rate among immigrants is half that of the native population?
That's right. I have a table in my written testimony that you can look at. Top 20 cities for immigration court filings over the last 4 years. 19 of those cities saw a decline in their homicide rate. If you look at all of the major cities, there is a negative correlation between increasing numbers of immigrants and the homicide rate. So that means more immigrants, lower homicide rates. That holds true across the United States. So I think the correlation that's trying to be made is more immigrants, more illegal immigrants, more chaos, more crime. That does not hold. What we do see under this administration is an increasing willingness to ignore the laws. He has, as I mentioned, signed an executive order that says he can ignore due process rights for people who are accused of being in the country illegally. This is an incredibly dangerous assertion of authority and should be investigated by Congress.
And is it a reasonable proposition for a local leader? I know I was chairman of my county, which is like being mayor of a large county, And, we focused on local law enforcement. We tried to help the feds when we could. We were cooperative where we could be. But our job was local law enforcement. And there is a clash when ICE behaves this way, and I described some horrible incidents. It instills fear in the immigrant community, and it fosters non-cooperation rather than cooperation, which is the mandate of each of these leaders, is it not?
Absolutely. We want cooperation. Many of these cities are the reason why immigrants are more likely to cooperate and report crimes to the police than the U.S.-born population is. So there are good reasons to limit this mass deportation of people in their communities.
I would just argue that the premise of this hearing is false. We have local law enforcement cooperating with the local political leadership, and it's working. It's bringing down crime rates. And the proposition that immigrants cause crime is false. In fact, patently false, as your testimony, I think, would demonstrate, Mr. Beer. And the idea that these are sanctuary cities that need to be punished is simply a war on urban America. And I'm proud of the mayors who are in front of us here today, and I thank them for their testimony, and I thank them for their service to their local communities. I relate to it, and I think it's a noble calling. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Mike Johnston, I hope we can start off on a level field of agreement here. So in your testimony, you said that locals were asking Denver, what will you do? When they saw 10 to 11 buses coming in a day and 42,000 illegal aliens entering their city. Denver, what will you do? And in a Fox 31 interview in January, you blamed state law for not allowing the city of Denver to coordinate with ICE, resulting in Denver being a sanctuary city, saying, quote, the whole state is bound by our state law in this, which is pretty consistent in some of these practices, like everywhere in the state. We don't honor ICE detainers, end quote. I've demanded Governor Jared Polis and the Colorado State Legislature to repeal them. Douglas County has led on a lawsuit to get those laws repealed. So, Mr. Mayor, would you join me today in calling and demanding that these sanctuary policies, these Colorado state laws, be repealed?
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Yes or no, Mr. Mayor?
Pardon?
Yes or no? Will you join me?
I do not believe the detainer law needs to be changed. I can tell you what Denver does right now.
Okay, so you don't want them to coordinate with ICE, but yet you're blaming the state of Colorado for those policies. It's a statewide law. It's not a Denver law. And you're blaming the state of Colorado for the law, yet you will not call for that law to be repealed. Correct? Yes or no?
We do coordinate with ICE presently. I'm happy to tell you what we do on this. We've honored detainer requests more than 1,226 times over the last
What about
years.
What about before a warrant? There are many issues before a warrant.
So if what happens is if ICE has sends us a detainer request,
Well, you have local law enforcement officers, Mr. Mayor, who are unable to coordinate with ICE to even get the initial warrant. They aren't allowed to tell them that they are illegal aliens. So unfortunately, you won't join me in asking for this law, demanding that this law be repealed. So let's keep going. In 2017, Denver passed an ordinance that ensured any city employee who spoke with federal immigration authorities would be fired, among other policies that have led to local and national media outlets to call Denver a sanctuary city. So now let me ask you, would a city employee be fired for communicating with anyone from the EPA?
Right now, Congresswoman, our policy is we don't ask people's status.
Would any city employee be fired for communicating and coordinating, talking with an agent from the EPA, a federal employee?
Not to my knowledge, Congresswoman.
What about Health and Human Services? Would they get fired for talking with someone from Health and Human Services?
Not to my knowledge, Congresswoman.
So they would only be fired for talking to federal law enforcement officers?
No, that's incorrect, Congresswoman.
This is an ordinance
city employees do,
Denver passed in 2017, Mr. Mayor.
Our city employees do, in fact, communicate with ICE. We do coordinate on multiple things with ICE. For instance, if there is a violent criminal warrant in the city, we pursue that
we're talking
together.
Before the warrants, Mr. Mayor. There are issues happening before warrants are issued, and local law enforcement officers are unable to coordinate because there is no warrant. And your ordinance says that a city employee would be fired for communicating with federal law enforcement. So you've been mayor for 600 days. Have you ever called for that ordinance to be repealed?
We are not unable to coordinate with ICE right now. We're in communication with ICE right now.
Only if there is a warrant, but I'm talking prior to the warrant.
We wouldn't have a reason to coordinate.
Because you
prior
don't know
to
if they're
warrant.
illegal, because you are unable to coordinate until there is a warrant. So that's why this ordinance needs to be repealed. So now the 600 days, there's been no time to ask for this to be repealed. You did have a newcomer's playbook, 25 pages. You had time to put that together. And you had time to agree with the city council to authorize up to $2 million to pay Joe Biden's former lawyer, his law firm, to help cover your ass for Denver's sanctuary city policies for this hearing, correct?
Thank you, Congresswoman. We have counsel.
Did you authorize that spending?
We have counsel to support this committee's investigation into any documents you may have. That is a year-long contract for the 13,000 city employees.
And your budget
you may
is
request documents from.
seriously declining. Denver Magazine reported that Denver has spent $7.5 million on shipping illegal aliens to other destinations. Mayor Adams, did Mayor Johnston ever coordinate with you and tell you that he was shipping illegal aliens to your city?
We coordinated in communication around the entire asylum seeker issue in our cities.
So I've heard that Denver crime went down. Well, Aurora's crime went up because you were also shipping them to Aurora. And we have documentation that I don't have time to discuss here in this hearing that proves you were shipping illegal aliens to Aurora. Their crime was increasing while you were hiding under laws that you will not demand be repealed, ordinance from your city. And then crime was going up from Trinidad gangs vandalizing apartment owners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I hope that we can get this
We have a
resolved in
5-minute
Colorado.
rule, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, gentlelady's time's expired. Chair recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C.
There have been a lot of talk today about these cities and their, in my view, principal decision not to respond to extrajudicial ICE detainers. But I would like to back up and talk about these detainers, what these detainers really are. Requests from ICE to unconstitutionally hold someone without due process or probable cause. Enforcing ICE detainers is also expensive, often results in mistakenly holding U.S. citizens and undermines public safety. It diverts resources from protecting the local community to carry out the federal government's job of immigrant enforcement. Mayor Johnston, what challenges do ICE detainers represent to your law enforcement and city resources?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I think that was to me, right? Sometimes
That's
I get
correct.
confused. Okay. Thank you, Congresswoman. I think it's important, I appreciate to describe what Denver currently does in terms of what coordination looks like and what it doesn't, which is if we get a detainer request, if we have someone in our custody that ICE would like to get access to, what we do is we provide them a notification of release. And so if that person will be released from our custody, we notify them of the time and the date when they will be released, so ICE, if they choose to, could pick that person up. We have done that 1,226 times over the last 7 years, and that has enabled ICE, when they choose to be able to bring someone into custody. What we do not do is hold someone beyond their release date, because there are multiple courts who have found that to be unconstitutional. If someone is serving a sentence and that sentence expires this Friday, we can't hold them another 7 days without an additional charge. And so that is what state law does, and sheriffs around the state would say it is a strain on local resources to hold them for a civil issue that is not linked to a criminal charge that we have in our city or another jurisdiction. That's why we don't honor those types of detainers.
Mayor Johnston, how about for Chicago?
So thank you for that question. And for Chicago, again, our top priority with the Welcoming City Ordinance is to ensure maximum safety. The type of coordination that happens between our local law enforcement and our communities is paramount to building trust and keeping our communities safe. The ordinance as well as the state law, the Illinois Trust Act, which was passed with bipartisan support and signed by the Republican governor, Bruce Rauner. We do not permit our local law enforcement from engaging in any federal matters. With a criminal warrant, our city and our state will cooperate with the federal government, but without a criminal warrant, our local law enforcement focuses in on local issues to keep the people of Chicago safe.
Mayor Wu, how would fulfilling ICE detainers detract from public safety in your city?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for hosting us, first of all, in your district. We hear every day from Boston residents, a city that is 28% people who were born in another country, that the trust and feeling that they know they can call 911 when they need help, or if they have information to solve a crime and police need that help, that they feel comfortable in doing so. And so our policy in Boston is that regardless of your background or immigration status, you have access to our libraries. We want you to take your kids to school. We want you to be part of our community. And also, regardless of immigration status, if you commit a crime, if you do harm in the community, you will be held accountable.
It is critical to the safety of Americans that cities have the ability to decide what is in the best interest of their people. Mayors and local enforcement know their cities best. I would yield any time remaining to the ranking member.
I just want to underscore what the gentlelady has said. Local government knows best how local enforcement, law enforcement works. And cooperating with ICE is part of that, but they can't be a substitute for ICE doing its own job, which is a federal responsibility. Thank you for yielding.
Before I recognize Mr. Jordan, I believe Ms. Boebert has a unanimous consent.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to submit to the record multiple local news articles referencing Denver's sanctuary policies, including the Newcomers Playbook written by Mayor Adams and the budget, which shows millions and millions of dollars of the Denver city budget cut.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Johnston, who's Abraham Gonzalez?
Thank you, Congressman. He is a individual that was released from the county jail on Friday in the city and county of Denver.
That's all you know about him?
I do know that he was facing charges that the
Venezuelan gang member arrested by Border Patrol on September 20th, 2023, released into the country by the Biden administration. A few months later, he's arrested in your city, charged with aggravated assault. On March 11th, 2024, he's charged with motor vehicle theft, stole a car, and then on March 20th, 2024, Mr. Gonzalez is charged with felony menacing. 6 days after that last charge, I send you a detainer, which includes an administrative warrant. Basically, it says if you're going to release this bad guy, this gang member who allegedly stole a car, menaced people, and assaulted people, give us a 48-hour heads up. Is that right? That refresh your memory?
I do know about the detainer request. I do know that we provided a notification of release.
What kind of notice did you give ICE when you released him?
We gave him notification. I'm not sure how long in advance it was.
1 hour.
I do know that.
1 hour.
I do know that there were
1 hour notice, and you released him 5 days ago, right? Why not give him more heads up? Actually, let's put the slide up. Let's see what it says here. But let's put the slide up. This is what the Denver Sheriff's Department, it's kind of hard to see, so I'll read it. It says, Denver Sheriff Department, ICE notification being released to the streets. I simply said, just release him to us. You release him to the streets. Why not release him to ICE?
Thank you. What we've done, and we do this regularly, we've done 1,226 of these, is we notify ICE.
I'm asking about one. I'm not asking about the 1,200. I'm asking about Mr. Abraham Gonzalez, who's a gang member from Venezuela, stole a car, assaulted someone. You had him in your custody for how long?
I know that we released
345 days you had him in custody. And I said, hey, can you give us 48 hours heads up?
I don't know.
You gave him 1 hour notice.
Mr. Congressman, we notified them released. There were 6 ICE agents present when he was released, so they had enough time to respond and to be present.
Respond where?
to the jail where we released him from. So we released him we notified them of the release time. When we notify them of release, they come to the jail facility to pick them up.
Why didn't you say that's not what you said? You said you released him to the streets. Did you release him to the streets? You release him to ICE?
What we do, sir, is we release him from our county jail, and we coordinate with ICE on that release time and release date so that ICE can come and pick them up from that location.
Pick them up where? In the parking lot?
Yes, sir. They're on the facility
Guess
property.
what happened in the parking lot?
I know, sir. I've reviewed the video. So I looked at it. I've talked to the sheriff last night.
One of the ICE officers got assaulted, didn't he?
I've reviewed the video,
They had to tase the guy, didn't they?
Would you like me to answer, sir?
No, I'd like you to answer. Did they tase him?
I know that there were 6 officers that had multiple tasers. I saw the
So they
detention
had
on
6
video.
officers. If you keep him in the facility and they come in the facility and get him, does it take 6 officers? Probably takes 2, doesn't it?
So we've been doing these, as I mentioned, 1,226 times. This is the first time I've been made aware of there's been an incident like this. So I reached out to ICE after I saw the video. I've coordinated with their team and offered to sit down and see if there are procedures we can change.
It's a simple
make sure
question.
this works smoothly.
It's a simple question. You can release him in the parking lot, give ICE 1 hour notice, and they got to send 6 officers to arrest this guy. Or you can say, hey, what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to hold him. You come in and bring 2 officers in, and you turn him over there. Why not do it that way?
We have a city ordinance.
You know why you don't do it that way?
We have a city ordinance that governs.
Because you're a sanctuary city. This is the whole point.
No, sir, I disagree with you.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you why. If you talk about sanctuary as a definition of shielding people from law enforcement, we do not do that. What we do is provide services. In this context, what we did is we coordinated the release.
An officer got assaulted because of your policy, which says we're going to release him to, in your words, not mine, to the streets. They have to arrest him in the parking lot. They bring 6 officers when they could have had 1 or 2 just come in your facility, in the jail, and take the guy there. But you won't do it that way.
I've seen the video. I've reached out to
I don't
ICE.
care if
I've
you've seen
offered
the
to
video. I
sit
know the
down and
facts
coordinate
too.
on strategies. If we need to make adjustments to what we do on releases, we'll do that. This is the first time in the 1,226 releases
You know, I
I've
read your
so
written
we'll take
testimony
action.
last night. I read your written testimony last night. 4.5 pages. And you used the words safe, safer, or safety 13 times. Talking about my job is to protect the safety of the people in Denver. We prioritizing making sure everyone in our community is safe. That's a lie. Because it was not safer for the ICE agents who are part of your community. No way was it safer. The safest thing to do is to say, ICE, we got him in custody. Come here, we're releasing. We held him 345 days. We can't hold him a second longer. We can't wait for you to come inside the building. We got to let him go, so you have to arrest him in the parking lot. That is how stupid sanctuary policies are and what they mean to the community that you put at risk and to the ICE officers ICE officer who was assaulted. And they had to use a taser on them. It's not good.
Mr. Chairman.
Time, Mr. Chairman.
5 minutes is up.
Consent request.
Gentlemen's time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Connolly. I want to thank the panelists for your willingness to come before the committee and help us with our work. You know, I truly believe that if we had a rational and comprehensive immigration policy in this country, if we competently regulated the flow of immigration, if we knew the purpose and circumstances of each immigrant's arrival here, and if every immigrant knew what was expected of them when they arrived, I honestly and truly believe that immigration could be the greatest blessing for our country. Look at our world rivals, China and Russia. No one is trying to sneak into China, sneak into Russia. It's because of what we offer here as a nation. There is a substantive issue that's at play here, and I want to address that. So under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of the Constitution, it provides Congress, and I'll read the section here, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. And Clause 18 further provides that Congress has the power to make all laws that shall be necessary and proper to execute its enumerated powers, including immigration. So it appears that Congress has taken up that responsibility in the Immigration and Nationality Act, which they exercise under constitutional writ. On the other hand, we have local so-called sanctuary city laws that at times, so those sanctuary cities laws tend to address local cooperation with federal authorities. in your jurisdictions, within your cities. And sometimes it does appear that the sanctuary city laws are defending against the congressional grant of authority to operate in that area. Now, you all, as mayors, and I ask this of the entire panel, you deal with this every single day, and we've heard some of it in your testimony eloquently. How do we, as lawmakers, we're struggling with this right now. There's a tension between that authority of Congress to act under Article 1 of the Constitution, and then your responsibility, nobly taken, to provide a safe environment for the residents and visitors to your cities. How do we reconcile, and I'm asking you for advice. You have a great perspective on this. How do we together reconcile the tension between those two operating systems, grants of power? And I'd welcome any advice you have on that, because that's what we are struggling with up here in terms of trying to come up with a comprehensive immigration policy that addresses all of these concerns. Mayor Johnson?
Congressman, I'm happy to start the response. We obviously believe there is a federal system that has federal obligations and state and local obligations. We think, as Mayor Wu said, that our officers are uniquely prepared, trained, and ready to enforce local law and to keep our city safe. We want to focus on that. We do not have the capacity for our law enforcement to be doing federal immigration enforcement, but we want to be partners in making sure we're pulling violent criminals off the street. We do that now. We've done it in the past. We'll keep doing it. But we think the capacity for the federal government to focus on.
But what I'm trying to point at is this. So the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, rode into office on this issue. On this issue. He put people in fear. I'm in a state that's 2,400 miles from the border. We're going to spend $1.5 billion on providing services and housing and everything to people who are in our state unlawfully. He got into office on that issue. So the costs to democracy are massive. It is now threatening our democracy because we have mishandled this issue. So we need to get together on this and turn immigration, like I say, into the greatest blessing that this country has, and not something that people are afraid of. That's the challenge.
May I, Congressman?
Please.
This may be the last blue dress I'm wearing this month. It's going to be green from here on out as we celebrate Irish American heritage back at home. Please pass comprehensive immigration law that is consistent and compassionate. That will make our jobs possible, and we would so appreciate that partnership.
I hear you. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes.
Chair, I have a unanimous consent request.
I didn't. I'm sorry.
I have a unanimous consent request.
All right. Proceed.
Okay. I'd like to seek unanimous consent to enter into the record thousands of DHS agents shift to deportation instead of drugs, weapons, and human trafficking. That is February 2025 USA Today.
Without objection, so ordered.
Parents pull kids from childcare as immigration fears hit U.S. youngest.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair.
Finally, an 11-year-old girl in Texas died by suicide after she was bullied about her family's immigration status, her mother says.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair recognizes Dr. Gosar from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Wu, I'll be showing up at your house tomorrow with my bags at 5 o'clock. Leave your doors unlocked, please. What are you making for dinner? Because I expect a warm meal and a balanced diet. Now, I'm going to need a car, and please leave me some cash because I'm going to need to go to my doctor's appointment on Friday. That would be to Mr. Mayor Johnson. Now, I don't want to sleep on the couch, so put me up at a luxury hotel. The other Mayor Johnson. Obviously, you wouldn't like this because you don't know me, right? You know nothing about me. You might not like that. Sanctuary cities offer this kind of hope, this false hope, to illegal aliens by saying that very thing. Stay with me. We don't tell anybody that you break our laws. Now, thank you. You've made the United States complicit and one of the largest purveyors of human trafficking in the world. Thank you. You're disgracing the legal immigration system that came here and the immigrants that came here the right way, through Ellis Island at the time, now through going through our process. And I want to talk about that process because I've always been told, and it's never been really challenged, is that good process builds good policy, builds good politics. I think that works really, really good because you can always fall back to the process. If the process isn't good, you always get a good process. Now, you heard the word establishing trust, okay? How can you establish trust at the very beginning when you have a false narrative here? You're defending folks who have broken the law. The definition I've always looked at is trust is a series of promises kept. What kind of trust are you supporting here? What is a trust with an illegal alien? It's a false hope. It's a false trust. Welcome, we're bringing you in. It's disorganized process. Now, let me ask you a question. Mayor Adams, did you support SB 1070?
I'm sorry?
Did you support the Arizona law called SB 1070?
I'm not familiar with it, sir.
Well, let me explain, okay?
Mm-hmm.
SB 1070 challenged the federal government on its supremacy clause. Because we, in Arizona, wanted, the government wasn't doing anything, so we thought, we'll do this. We can't allow them to break laws. The Supreme Court ruled that, struck it down. Now, it seems contraindicating here that you would have supported SB 1070, right, Mayor Adams? Based on the premise that you or would you violate the supremacy clause in regards to immigration?
Would I
violate the supremacy clause?
This is way over my head.
Okay.
I felt law.
That's okay. Mayor Johnson, would you have supported SB 1070, allowing Arizona to follow their own laws? Because that's what you're doing right here.
Thank you, Congressman. We currently follow all federal law, all state law, and all local law. So we do not have any supremacy clause challenges that we're pursuing or maintaining.
Okay. Well, it seems like you are. But Mr. Johnson, do you agree?
The city of Chicago complies with all laws.
Okay. Mayor Wu.
I'm not familiar with that law because I'm focused on the city of Boston, but we follow all state, city, and federal laws in Boston.
What happens when you get in conflict with them? Who do you support?
The Constitution, as I understand it, doesn't require cities or police officers or anyone to follow their laws in conflict, follow federal laws in conflict with local laws or state laws.
Okay, in the Constitution it says, and it's explicit, that the federal government has jurisdiction and supremacy over all immigration laws, right? I mean, I've heard it a number of times from my colleagues over here. We're the ones who can define that. We're the ones that have that. We just heard we want a comprehensive immigration policy. How can you get a comprehensive immigration policy when you're defining it from the very get-go? You're building it on false premises and false tenets.
Respectfully, Congressman, you could pass bipartisan legislation, and that would be comprehensive immigration law. The false narrative is that immigrants in general are criminals, or immigrants in general cause all sorts of danger and harm. That is actually what is undermining safety in our communities. If you wanted to make us safe, pass gun reforms. Stop cutting Medicaid. Stop cutting cancer research. Stop cutting funds for veterans. That is what will make our city safe.
Yes, thank you. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Krishnamurti from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor Johnson, there's been much talk about Chicago and its enforcement of laws to rid our communities of criminals, so I want to give you a chance to address some of these questions. First, Mayor Johnson, the city of Chicago operates under 4 sets of laws: federal, state, county, and of course, Chicago's own laws, right?
That is correct.
And most of these laws are not within Chicago's sole power to change. For example, the Illinois Trust Act, a state law, was enacted in 2017 by then Republican Governor Bruce Rauner and dictates interactions between ICE and law enforcement, right?
That is correct.
And under Chicago's own law, I have a copy of it right here, Chicago is required to help ICE whenever ICE presents a judicial criminal warrant for an arrest, correct?
Yes.
In fact, Chicago has assisted ICE with criminal warrants in the past, right?
Yes.
So just to clear it up, any time that ICE does the work and goes to a court to get a criminal warrant to arrest somebody, the city of Chicago not only is required to, but does cooperate to remove that criminal from our community, right?
That is correct.
Let me turn to another topic. President Trump has said many things about Chicago, including that it is, I have this NBC News report, worse than Afghanistan. Mayor, I'd suggest the facts suggest otherwise. For example, Condé Nast recently named Chicago the best big city in America 8 years in a row.
A friendly amendment, best freaking city in the world, city of Chicago.
Chicago's the largest rail hub in America.
That is correct.
Chicago's a quantum technology hub in this country.
$20 billion new investment.
Chicago area is the home to the second most number of Fortune 500 headquarters of any city in America, right?
Just voted again the top relocator for corporate headquarters for 13 consecutive years.
And it's home to O'Hare Airport, the most interconnected airport on the continent, is that right?
That is correct.
That doesn't sound like Afghanistan to me, sir, does it?
The city of Chicago is a beautiful place. We also have 20% of the world's fresh water right in our front yard. Our restaurants are amazing. In fact, everything that is dope about America comes from Chicago.
A Republican named Lincoln was nominated for president in Chicago, and a Democrat named Obama called Chicago home too. It's the city of big shoulders, the heart of the heartland, the home to the world's best pizza. And we're not going to take any slander from Donald Trump or anyone else lying down. Is that right?
That is correct.
Sir, I want to turn your attention to another topic. Mayor Johnson, you'd agree with me that high grocery prices are among the top concerns for the people of Chicago, right?
The economic conditions that are unfortunately that are not being addressed by Washington has caused a great deal of trepidation and anxiety.
Mayor Wu, according to USDA, the wholesale cost of a dozen eggs has gone from $6.59 since January 19th when Donald Trump took office to $8.39, a 27% increase, and this has got to anger Bostonians, right?
People are doing their very best, trying their hardest, working multiple jobs, and they need support.
Mayor Johnston, I suppose that people in Denver are concerned as well, right?
Very concerned. This is the most important issue for us, is how we make sure that it's affordable to live in the city.
Mayor Adams, the same is true for New Yorkers?
Affordability is an issue that's impacting our city, and that's why we're doing best we can to put $30 billion back in the pockets of working class people.
President Trump, if you're watching this hearing, I respectfully ask, when will egg costs be high enough for you to issue one executive order on bird flu? $10 a carton, $15 a carton? It'll soon be cheaper to buy a magazine for an AK-47 than to buy breakfast. This is flat out wrong. Turn to my last topic. Interestingly, last night in a record-long address, the president did not mention the word Medicaid once, which is top of mind for everyone. Mayor Johnson, you don't dispute that 1.6 million people in Cook County are enrolled in Medicaid, right?
I do not dispute that. In fact, in most of our safety net hospitals, 70% of the individuals that are being serviced are being serviced through Medicaid.
I recently received outreach from Lurie Children's, a preeminent children's hospital located in Chicago. They said, quote, slashing Medicaid will put access to care for all children in our state at risk. You would agree that's unacceptable, right?
That is unacceptable.
It doesn't matter where you're from. If you're white, black, brown, poor, or rich, massive cuts to Medicaid will devastate our health care system. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mayors, thanks for being here, leaving your cities to come to Washington, D.C. today. By either definition or by claim, each of you, I think, could justifiably say represent what's considered a sanctuary city. If you could describe it, what would you, sanctuary from what? Anybody? Mayor Johnson, you want to start? Mayor Johnston?
Thank you, Congressman. I welcome that because I wanted to clarify. We do not shield people from federal.
I just asked
We
you
do not
what,
provide
so
sanctuary.
you don't consider yourself a sanctuary city?
We provide services and supports.
Do
We
you
not
consider
provide
yourself a sanctuary city? That's just,
We do not under that definition.
you don't use the definition, you're not a sanctuary.
We call ourselves a welcoming city. We
Okay,
provide
so what are you welcoming and who are you not welcoming?
Well, we're welcoming everybody.
Okay.
We don't keep folks.
So you're welcoming criminals that you don't have any idea what their crime background is, and you're good with that?
No, we aggressively pursue.
How do you
violent
do that?
criminals anyway.
No, how do you vet the people that you welcome in your sanctuary city?
Sir, we don't vet folks that arrive from Illinois or California with a background check when they come into the Denver airport any more than someone from another location.
So you're welcoming any illegal immigrant or illegal alien to your city without question?
Well, folks that make the decision to come to Denver, they arrive, and then we expect
But
them to
you
get a
call
job,
them, you
pay
welcome
taxes.
them. You welcome them. You call them to your city and say, if you come here, you will be safe from what?
Thank you, sir. We don't call anyone to our city. Folks that arrive in our city, we offer same access to services they may need to be successful. And if they break the law, we hold them accountable, we charge them, we prosecute them.
What about if they've already broken the law?
Well, if they've already broken the law and there is another jurisdiction that has a warrant for that person, they let us know and we would cooperate to transfer them to that jurisdiction.
I think we saw in Mr. Jordan's conversation with you that you really don't do that. Mayor Johnson, how about you? How many, according to my records, you have welcomed 51,648 illegal aliens to your sanctuary city. So I'd ask you, sanctuary from what?
If you're referring to the number of individuals that were bused from Governor Abbott without any coordination, the 52,000 individuals that were seeking asylum, those individuals were bused to us. I passed a bus ordinance to work to coordinate with the governor of Texas. He refused to do that. But that transfer of individuals was the result of the governor of Texas, not the result of a welcoming city ordinance.
Welcoming city ordinance. So you're not welcoming these people that came here illegally?
The individuals that were bused to us from the border.
They were not welcome in Chicago? You didn't welcome them? You didn't provide them sanctuary?
So the welcoming city ordinance is pretty straightforward. It allows for our local law enforcement to focus on local policies, and that's why we're seeing a decline in violence.
So you
in the
don't
city of
care
Chicago.
about federal law enforcement policies, only local policies?
We comply with all laws. What I do care about is this body, Washington, passing comprehensive immigration
So let me ask you this. Chicago residents reported 28,443 violent crimes during 2024 alone, cases of aggravated assault rising to the highest level in 2 decades. Now, also, state funds, $160 million, were issued to illegal alien job assistance shelters in Chicago. You're the mayor of Chicago. Do you think that your residents or the residents of your state should be paying for that more than they should be paying for their own needs, their own roads, their own public safety? I mean, who elected you? The people that came illegally, whether they were sent to you or not, or the people that reside in Chicago? Who elected you? And who do you serve?
The people of Chicago elected me as the 57th mayor of the city of Chicago, and we serve all the residents of the city of Chicago.
Illegal or not, criminal or not. How many of the 662,566 illegal aliens with criminal histories that ICE has reported are now residing in Chicago?
Someone will have to get back with you with that number. I don't keep account
Do you
of.
take immigration information from criminals as they're arrested and processed? Do you take immigration information?
Our local law enforcement focuses on getting all violent individuals
Do you
off the
determine
streets
whether
of
they're here
Chicago.
legally, what their immigration status is as a function of your justice
Gentleman,
system?
time's expired, but please feel free to answer the question, Mayor.
The Welcome City Ordinance ensures that our local residents communicate and trust local law enforcement to ensure that criminals and crime is being addressed,
So
and
you
that's
have
why
no
violent
idea how
crime
many are relieved.
has
Thank
gone
you,
down
Mr.
in the
Chairman.
city
I'll
of
yield.
Chicago. Thank you very much,
Chair
Congressman.
now
Mr.
recognizes
Chairman, I have a
Mr.
unanimous
Khanna.
consent request.
Chair now
Mr.
recognizes.
Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
I'm sorry, Ms. Presley.
I have a unanimous consent request.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to seek unanimous consent to enter into the record mass deportations would deliver a catastrophic blow to the U.S. economy. This is from the Joint Economic Committee, December 2024.
From where? What publication?
The Joint Economic Committee, December 2024.
Without objection, so ordered.
I'd like to seek unanimous consent to enter into the record from the American Immigration Council, October 2024, mass deportation, devastating cost to America, its budget and economy.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair recognizes Mr. Khanna from California.
Mr. Chair.
Wait, I'm sorry. Mayor Wu needs a short break to attend to her young child. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I got the note that the baby's okay for now, so I'll continue. But thank you. I will. I believe from my husband that the baby's okay, and
okay, well,
and the arrangement, if it's okay, was
okay.
that everyone would take a break, so I wouldn't have to go into a back room by myself to nurse when it's time. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Khanna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I find the Republican position in this hearing quite ironic because the Republicans are the party that are always touting local government, state government, local control, and not having federal overreach. So I want to explore actually one of your favorite topics on the other side of the aisle, the infamous mask mandates. I know how much you love them. When CDC came out with the mask mandate order of January 29, 2021, they said that we needed to have fines of $1,500 for anyone who didn't wear a mask on a plane or in a public space. And they said that there needed to be referred criminally to the Transportation Authority if they violated it more than once. Now, Governor Abbott said in Executive Order 38, we're not going to enforce, we're not going to have our cities enforce the mask mandate. And Governor DeSantis said the same thing. We're not going to have our local police enforce the mandate. I want to ask Mayor Adams and Mayor Wu, because you had slightly different views on the mask mandate, but Mayor Adams, you were actually praised in New York for saying we are going to take away some of these mask mandates earlier so businesses can open and there can be a revival in New York. Did you ever, in law enforcement, to your knowledge, enforce the CDC mask mandate and ask your law enforcement to fine people who didn't wear a mask $1,500?
What we did was looked at the science and looked at how it will impact business, and after issuing warnings in education.
But I think it's fair to say, Mayor, right? You never referred anyone to the Transportation Department for prosecution, and you never had local police out there saying we're going to fine people $1,500 with the CDC mandate.
The goal was to always ensure that people will carry out the procedure, and we did several education and warning in the process.
Mayor Wu, you were a great advocate of masks and looked at the science. Do you know if your city government actually ever used police resources to carry out the CDC or Transportation Department's mask mandate where they were fining $1,500 or referring for criminal prosecution?
I am not aware of any incidents of someone in Boston having been fined or prosecuted for any mask-related issues. We certainly prioritize public health and saving lives, and so our role as a city was to provide positive communication, outreach, make sure there were signs and different community organizations that could go and remind people to stay safe and do their best to take care of each other and their families.
As much of an advocate as you were for masks, and I was an advocate for masks, would you have been hesitant to order your law enforcement, your local police, to say if someone was violating those mask mandates that we need to cooperate and turn them over to the Transportation Department for prosecution? would that have given you some pause if the federal government were saying use your police departments to fine people $1,500 and give us their records for criminal prosecution?
Yes, it would have.
And so I guess I'm trying to understand, you know, if we set this precedent that we want cities to be enforcing every federal mandate, then what happens when there's a new Democratic president that comes and says, we want a mask mandate that the Republicans may not want? And when there are conservatives like Governor DeSantis or Governor Abbott saying we don't want our cities to enforce that. Do you see, Mayor Wu, any?
Next, the director of the CIA says the U.S. has paused intelligence sharing and weapons shipments to Ukraine. John Ratcliffe told Fox Business Today that President Trump ordered the pause because he questioned whether Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was committed to peace. The pause comes after the two leaders had a contentious meeting at the White House last week. Ukraine relies on intelligence from the U.S. to help plan its offensive and defensive operations against Russia. Ratcliffe did express hope the pause will soon be lifted. In a social media post yesterday, Zelensky described the fiery meeting with Trump as, quote, regrettable. He also said Ukraine is ready to negotiate an end to the war and sign a rare earth minerals deal with the U.S. And on President Trump's speech to a joint session of Congress, Trump tackled tariffs, international cooperation on energy, the fight against terror, and the war in Ukraine. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the key takeaways.
The President of the United States.
President Trump called for an end to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, making a direct appeal for peace.
It's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end the senseless war.
Trump called out Europeans for what he sees as not pulling their weight.
Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine, by far.
The president said he received a letter from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier in the day, stating Ukraine is ready to negotiate for lasting peace.
He said, "My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts."
Zelensky also signaled Ukraine's willingness to sign agreements on minerals and security.
Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful?
The president also tackled energy, highlighting international cooperation on a major energy initiative.
My administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each.
South Korea's industry minister confirmed Tuesday that Seoul and Washington will form a working group to discuss the pipeline, energy, shipbuilding, tariffs, and trade barriers. Turning to trade, Trump reaffirmed his commitment to tariffs, saying they will boost foreign investment in the U.S. and reduce the trade deficit.
Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries.
He said reciprocal tariffs will be imposed on any nation that levies fees on American products.
Countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair.
A series of tariffs, including 25% fees on goods from Canada and Mexico, and 20% in addition to those already imposed on China, took effect on Tuesday, and reciprocal tariffs are set to take effect on April 2nd.
Whatever they tax us, we will tax them. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer.
While critics warned tariffs could fuel inflation, Trump dismissed those concerns, calling any impact temporary. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said tariff negotiations with Canada and Mexico hinge on addressing the fentanyl crisis, with an announcement expected as early as Wednesday.
Fentanyl deaths in America need to come down, right? It's black and white.
China responded sharply to the new tariffs, with a spokesperson posting on X, "If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end." Moving on to the fight against terrorism, Trump also made a major announcement regarding the 2021 Abbey Gate bombing in Afghanistan that killed 13 U.S. service members.
Tonight, I am pleased to announce that we have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice.
Officials have identified the senior member of the branch of the ISIS terror group based in Afghanistan as Mohammed Sharifullah. Trump said Sharifullah was turned over to U.S. authorities by Pakistan. From a major energy project to Ukraine peace talks, Trump's address signals significant change ahead. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
A new development in the 2021 terror attack in Kabul, Afghanistan, which killed 13 American service members. Bombing suspect Mohammed Sharifullah was captured overseas. The Department of Justice says Sharifullah has been charged with providing and conspiring to provide material support for terrorism. The department added that a hearing is scheduled at a federal court in Virginia later today. Senator Elisa Slotkin delivered the Democratic rebuttal to President Trump's address to Congress last night. She called for a solution to what she described as a broken immigration system. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports.
Senator Slotkin acknowledged that America wants change.
But there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way.
Slotkin says Trump has talked a big game on the economy, but says people need to read the fine print.
Grocery and home prices are going up, not down, and he hasn't laid out a credible plan to deal with either of those. His tariffs on allies like Canada will raise prices on energy, lumber, and cars.
On immigration, Slotkin said securing the border without fixing the immigration system is dealing with the symptom and not the disease.
America is a nation of immigrants. We need a functional system keyed to the needs of our economy that allows vetted people to come and work here legally.
Congressman Al Green was removed from the House chamber after disrupting President Trump's address. About 4 minutes into the speech, Green rose to speak and shook his cane toward the president. He continued his disruptions despite repeated warnings, prompting House Speaker Mike Johnson to order his removal. Some Democratic lawmakers wore pink to Trump's address. Representative Doris Matsui of California posted on X that she was wearing pink, quote, to protest Trump betraying women and families for his billionaire buddies. Members of Congress reacted to Trump's speech afterwards.
They should be defending against this idea that the presidents can impound billions and billions of dollars and shut down departments without being held accountable.
What happened in the White House a couple of days ago saw so many people disavowing it from both sides of the aisle.
Viewers overwhelmingly approved of Trump's address. A CBS News poll found that 76% approved of the speech, with 23% disapproving. CBS noted the majority of viewers were Republican at 51%, with 27% independent and 20% Democrat. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump invited numerous guests to join last night's address to Congress. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on who the president welcomed.
Last night, President Trump turned to relatives of Laken Riley. The nursing student was murdered last year in Georgia while on a run.
Laken was stolen from us by a savage illegal alien gang member. With us this evening are Laken's beloved mother, Allison, and her sister, Lauren.
Trump also signed an executive order renaming a national wildlife refuge in Galveston in memory of a 12-year-old allegedly killed by 2 illegal immigrants. The girl's mother, Alexis, was in the gallery.
Moments ago, I formally renamed that refuge in loving memory of your beautiful daughter, Jocelyn. So, Mr. Vice President, if you would, may I have the order?
Another notable guest included DJ Daniel. The president had a surprise for the 13-year-old who is battling brain cancer.
I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
The Supreme Court ruled today that the Trump administration must resume payments to foreign aid organizations for work they've already done. The High Court's 5-4 decision upholds an order to release funding for contractors at the U.S. Agency for International Development and the State Department. Aid organizations said in a Supreme Court filing they would face extraordinary and irreversible harm if the funding freeze continues. President Trump is pursuing what he has called an America First agenda, ordering a 90-day pause on all foreign aid on his first day back in office. Trump and Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk continue to search for and cut what they say is waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. A federal judge has blocked President Trump from firing the Democratic chair of a U.S. agency. The agency handles appeals from fired or disciplined federal employees. U.S. District Judge Rudolph Country has ruled that Trump cannot remove Kathy Harris from the Merit Systems Protection Board without cause before her term expires in 3 years. He said the agency's mission requires independence. The 3-member board plays a key role in reviewing federal job disputes, a position that could become critical as Trump moves to shrink the federal workforce. The administration argued that firing restrictions encroach on the president's authority, but the judge cited a 90-year-old Supreme Court ruling limiting a president's power to remove certain agency heads. The Trump administration is appealing the decision. A court will also hear an oral argument today in a New York City case against the Trump administration. The case centers on FEMA money used to house illegal immigrants being taken back. The Supreme Court is considering whether the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has the authority to issue licenses for nuclear waste storage. The government and a company that was awarded a license to operate a nuclear waste storage facility in western Texas have appealed a ruling that declared it unlawful. A Texas-based oil and gas extraction organization and a nonprofit organization challenged the company's license. Texas and New Mexico later joined the challenge, arguing the facility posed environmental risks to the states. An appeals court found the Nuclear Regulatory Commission lacked authority to issue the license. Both the Biden and Trump administration have argued this disrupts nuclear energy operations as it leaves nowhere to store nuclear waste. The two states argue that the Yucca Mountains in Nevada already present a solution, but that facility has been held up in decades of legal opposition. A ruling in the case is expected by the end of June. The Trump administration wants to drop a lawsuit from the Biden administration would have made it illegal for Idaho healthcare practitioners to perform abortions requested as emergency care. Idaho's Defense of Life Act forbids abortions except when necessary to prevent the death of the pregnant woman or during the first trimester when the pregnancy was caused by rape or incest. Performing an abortion otherwise can lead to 5 years in prison and result in the revocation of a medical license of a doctor. The Biden administration argued that Idaho's law violates federal law, which requires hospitals accepting Medicare to provide stabilizing care in emergency rooms. It argued that stabilizing care includes abortion if requested. Idaho says its state law allows for abortions in life-threatening situations, but argues the Biden administration was trying to improperly expand its exceptions. It's a move that could shake up maritime trade in the Panama Canal and beyond. Investment company Blackrock and others are buying a majority stake in ports on the Panama Canal. The seller operates dozens of ports across the globe, this after pressure from President Trump to limit China's influence in the region. NTD's David Lam reports.
A group of investors has agreed to purchase a majority stake in Hutchison Port Holdings, which is part of Hong Kong-based conglomerate CK Hutchison, as announced on Tuesday. The company owns ports in the Panama Canal, the world's second busiest interoceanic waterway. The buyers include Global Infrastructure Partners, Terminal Investment, and Blackrock, which is known as one of the world's largest asset managers. They'll control 80% of the Hutchison Ports Group, which operates 43 ports in 23 countries. But ports in Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and other cities in China are excluded under the agreement. The group will also acquire 90% of Panama Ports Company, which operates the 2 ports in Balboa and Cristobal in Panama. CK Hutchison has been operating the ports for more than 2 decades. Although it's not financially tied to the Chinese regime, Hong Kong firms are subject to its oversight. The $22.8 billion deal would bring the key ports under U.S. corporate control. This comes after President Trump's pressure to limit China's influence in the region. The canal is key to global and U.S. trade as 2/3 of goods passing through the channel heads into or out of the United States. David Lamb, NTD News.
President Donald Trump is reiterating that the U.S. will take in trillions of dollars from tariffs. Now, a number of U.S. retailers are saying that they plan to pass on some or all of the cost to consumers. Trump says he has an economic plan that will work out well for the U.S. in the end. His administration says he could make a trade announcement as early as today. Here's more.
These tariffs, I think, are hopefully temporary.
President Donald Trump could unveil trade deals with Mexico and Canada as soon as today. That's according to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick speaking to Fox Business. And Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit the southern border. Lutnick says the deals probably won't mean pausing the 25% tariffs on Mexican and nearly all Canadian goods that started yesterday.
All of our wholesalers are letting us know, hey, the prices are going to go up.
Some businesses say they'll have to raise prices due to those tariffs and a now 20% duty on Chinese imports. Target CEO tells CNBC its produce could cost more starting this week, since a lot of it is from Mexico. Best Buy's CEO warns of price hikes too, because it gets many electronics from Mexico and China. Other retailers echo those statements.
We're going to have to raise our prices.
The impact to the vehicle is anywhere from $8,000 to even $12,000 per vehicle.
Mexico's president says she plans to announce retaliatory measures Sunday. Canada is imposing a 25% tariff on some U.S. goods now, with plans to include more later.
We will be united, and we will fight back, and we will win.
Some Trump voters say they hope he'll keep his campaign promise to lower prices.
I'm willing to give him the time because I feel he'll be able to do it.
And stay tuned, we'll cover more stories right after this break.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Reve Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and you know, there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy one, get two free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
Looking to refresh the style in your home? Here at Mathis Home, we can help you find exactly what you need during our spring style event. Whether you're looking for rustic farmhouse, classic, or modern and eclectic, we have all the latest looks that will leave your home feeling brand new. Whatever your style, we know that we can help you find it at the lowest price. Because not only do we want you to feel good in your home, we know that to earn your business, our prices have to be the best. So come to the spring style event at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. President Trump makes a major announcement of the war against terror and reads an unexpected letter from Ukrainian President Zelensky, highlights from his speech to a joint session of Congress, and how the Democrats responded. The U.S. pauses intelligence sharing with Ukraine, a move that limits Ukraine's ability to target Russian forces. Russia, meanwhile, said future talks with the U.S. will include discussion on Iran's nuclear program. The Supreme Court deals a blow to Trump's pause on foreign aid. Payments for completed work must resume. Vice President J.D. Vance heads to Eagle Pass, Texas today. He'll be joined by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Mayors of 4 U.S. cities are on Capitol Hill. Republicans press them on their sanctuary city policies and non-cooperation with Trump's mass deportation plans. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says President Trump could announce a trade deal with Mexico and Canada as soon as today. What we know so far.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today's Wednesday, March 5th. I'm Stephanie Cox. The Supreme Court ruled today that the Trump administration must resume payments to foreign aid organizations for the work they've already done. The High Court's 5-4 decision upholds an order to release funding for contractors at the U.S. Agency for International Development and the State Department. Aid organizations said in a Supreme Court filing they would face extraordinary and irreversible harm if the funding freeze continues. President Trump is pursuing what he has called an America First agenda, ordering a 90-day pause on all foreign aid on his first day back in office. Trump and Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk continue to search for and cut what they say is waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. A new development in the 2021 terror attack in Kabul, Afghanistan, which killed 13 American service members. Bombing suspect Mohammed Sharifullah was captured overseas. The Department of Justice said Sharifullah has been charged with providing and conspiring to provide material support for terrorism. The department added that a hearing is scheduled at a federal court in Virginia later today. Staying with President Trump's speech to a joint session of Congress, Trump tackled tariffs, international cooperation on energy, the fight against terror, and the war in Ukraine. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the key takeaways.
The President of the United States.
President Trump called for an end to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, making a direct appeal for peace.
It's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war.
Trump called out Europeans for what he sees as not pulling their weight.
Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine, by far.
The president said he received a letter from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier in the day, stating Ukraine is ready to negotiate for lasting peace.
He said, "My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts."
Zelensky also signaled Ukraine's willingness to sign agreements on minerals and security.
Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful?
The president also tackled energy, highlighting international cooperation on a major energy initiative.
My administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each.
South Korea's industry minister confirmed Tuesday that Seoul and Washington will form a working group to discuss the pipeline, energy, shipbuilding, tariffs, and trade barriers. Turning to trade, Trump reaffirmed his commitment to tariffs, saying they will boost foreign investment in the U.S. and reduce the trade deficit.
Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries.
He said reciprocal tariffs will be imposed on any nation that levies fees on American products.
Countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair.
A series of tariffs, including 25% fees on goods from Canada and Mexico, and 20% in addition to those already imposed on China, took effect on Tuesday, and reciprocal tariffs are set to take effect on April 2nd.
Whatever they tax us, we will tax them. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer.
While critics warn tariffs could fuel inflation, Trump dismissed those concerns, calling any impact temporary. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said tariff negotiations with Canada and Mexico hinge on addressing the fentanyl crisis, with an announcement expected as early as Wednesday.
Fentanyl deaths in America need to come down, right? It's black and white.
China responded sharply to the new tariffs, with a spokesperson posting on X, "If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end." Moving on to the fight against terrorism, Trump also made a major announcement regarding the 2021 Abbey Gate bombing in Afghanistan that killed 13 U.S. service members.
Tonight I am pleased to announce that we have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice.
Officials have identified the senior member of the branch of the ISIS terror group based in Afghanistan as Mohammed Sharifullah. Trump said Sharifullah was turned over to U.S. authorities by Pakistan. From a major energy project to Ukraine peace talks, Trump's address signals significant change ahead. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And Senator Alyssa Slotkin delivered the Democratic rebuttal to President Trump's address to Congress last night. She called for a solution to what she described as a broken immigration system. NTD's Daniel Monahan again.
Senator Slotkin acknowledged that America wants change.
But there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way.
Slotkin says Trump has talked a big game on the economy, but says people need to read the fine print.
Grocery and home prices are going up, not down, and he hasn't laid out a credible plan to deal with either of those. His tariffs on allies like Canada will raise prices on energy, lumber, and cars.
On immigration, Slotkin said securing the border without fixing the immigration system is dealing with the symptom and not the disease.
America is a nation of immigrants. We need a functional system keyed to the needs of our economy that allows vetted people to come and work here legally.
Congressman Al Green was removed from the House chamber after disrupting President Trump's address. About 4 minutes into the speech, Green rose to speak and shook his cane toward the president. He continued his disruptions despite repeated warnings, prompting House Speaker Mike Johnson to order his removal. Some Democratic lawmakers wore pink to Trump's address. Representative Doris Matsui of California posted on X that she was wearing pink, quote, to protest Trump betraying women and families for his billionaire buddies. Members of Congress reacted to Trump's speech afterwards.
They should be defending against this idea that the presidents can impound billions and billions of dollars and shut down departments without being held accountable.
What happened in the White House a couple of days ago saw so many people disavowing it from both sides of the aisle.
Viewers overwhelmingly approved of Trump's address. A CBS News poll found that 76% approved of the speech, with 23% disapproving. CBS noted the majority of viewers were Republican at 51%, with 27% Independent and 20% Democrat. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump invited numerous guests to last night's joint address to Congress. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on who the president welcomed.
Last night, President Trump turned to relatives of Laken Riley. The nursing student was murdered last year in Georgia while on a run.
Laken was stolen from us by a savage illegal alien gang member. With us this evening are Laken's beloved mother, Allison, and her sister, Lauren.
Trump also signed an executive order renaming a national wildlife refuge in Galveston in memory of a 12-year-old allegedly killed by 2 illegal immigrants. The girl's mother, Alexis, was in the gallery.
Moments ago, I formally renamed that refuge in loving memory of your beautiful daughter, Jocelyn. So, Mr. Vice President, if you would, may I have the order?
Another notable guest included DJ Daniel. The president had a surprise for the 13-year-old who is battling brain cancer.
I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
The Trump administration says more funding is needed to support its crackdown on illegal immigration. Border Czar Tom Homan said yesterday that additional resources, including more detention beds, enforcement tools, and deportation flights, are essential. Homan acknowledged the cost is significant, but called it a one-time expense. He contrasted the cost with ongoing taxpayer-funded services like education and health care for illegal immigrants. The number of encounters with illegal immigrants at the U.S.-Mexico border has dropped sharply since Trump entered the Oval Office. Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit Eagle Pass, Texas today to assess the Texas-Mexico border. Vance will be the highest-ranking official to travel to the border town under Trump's current administration. He will be joined by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Mayors of 4 U.S. cities are on Capitol Hill. Right now, Republicans are pressing them on their sanctuary city policies and on cooperation with President Trump's mass deportation plans. Democrats say the president's policies are forcing people to live in fear. NTD's Melina Wisecup joins us with more. Melina, tell us, what are mayors saying about why they support limited cooperation with ICE?
Hi, Steph. Good afternoon. Good to see you again. To what extent cities should cooperate with ICE has been a sticking point throughout this entire hearing, which is still ongoing at this point. Now, Republicans repeatedly pressed those Democrat mayors on their lack of cooperation with ICE, accusing them of harboring criminals, causing a ripple effect in their communities as well as throughout the nation. I'll give you a specific example. Jim Jordan pointed out one issue recently where a criminal illegal immigrant assaulted an ICE officer because of Denver's policies restricting local law enforcement from working with ICE directly. Listen into that exchange between Jordan and the Denver mayor.
You said you release him to the streets. Did you release him to the streets? You release him to ICE?
What we do, sir, is we release him from our county jail and we coordinate with ICE on that release time and release date so that ICE can come and pick them up from that location.
Pick them up where? In the parking lot?
Yes, sir. They're on the facility
property. Guess what happened in the parking lot?
I know, sir. I've reviewed the video. So I looked at it. I've talked to the sheriff last night.
One of the ICE officers got assaulted, didn't he?
I've reviewed the video,
They had
sir.
to tase the guy, didn't they?
Would you like me to answer, sir?
No, I'd like you to answer. Did they tase him?
I know that there were 6 officers that had multiple tasers. I saw the detention on video.
6 officers. If you keep him in the facility and they come in the facility and get him, does it take 6 officers? Probably takes 2, doesn't it?
Now, all the mayors said in agreement that one reason that they want to limit their cooperation with ICE is because they fear that if they cooperate more, it would make illegal immigrants fearful to come forward to the local police officers. So they're trying to build trust within their community, saying that if they cooperated with the feds more, those illegal immigrants would be less likely to commit crimes. They're also saying that it's causing illegal immigrants in their communities to have fear to even go out into the public. One mayor said that that a pastor told her that pews in the church were half empty now that the Trump administration is taking on this mass deportation. Mayors also said that the crime statistics in their cities are actually down, despite Republicans' claims that the illegal immigration surge has caused crimes in these cities to go up. But Congresswoman Boebert from Colorado pushed back on this, saying that the lower crime statistics in Denver specifically are actually not a real picture of what's going on, because she said that the mayor of Denver actually sent those illegal immigrants to another city in Colorado by the name of Aurora instead, causing crime there to spike instead. Now, Eric Adams, of course, the mayor of New York City, says he can't control federal law. He can't control who comes into the country illegally, but says that he must deal with whoever is residing in his city. He also notably said that he's entangled in several conflicting laws on the local level that makes this job very challenging. Listen to Adams.
New York City was hit with the largest humanitarian crisis in our city's history over the last 3 years. Federal law did not allow me to stop buses from entering New York City. State law required me to provide all in our city with housing and meals and to educate children. City law makes it unlawful to collaborate with ICE for civil enforcement. We complied with all of these legal requirements and still manage the humanitarian crisis with the care and compassion, while at the same time bringing down crime.
Now, Steph, another point that's coming up repeatedly in this ongoing hearing is lack of congressional action. So Congress has not updated immigration law in decades. So those mayors are calling for the comprehensive immigration reform. One Democrat actually said that he feels the reason why President Trump won the election was because of this issue, and said that it allowed Trump to capitalize on it and win the November election. Listen to Stephen Lynch.
We're going to spend $1.5 billion on providing services and housing and everything to people who are in our state unlawfully. He got into office on that issue. So the costs to democracy are massive. It is now threatening our democracy because we have mishandled this issue. So we need to get together on this and turn immigration, like I say, into the greatest blessing that this country has, and not something that people are afraid of.
Now, to that point, Steph, one witness also said that the reason that illegals come here, why those immigrants come here illegally, is because the law is so messed up, it's not comprehensive at this point, that it's too difficult for them to come here the right way. So they're kind of defending what they call the surge of illegal immigration, and also calling for Congress to take action. So I'm sure a lot more will come out during this hearing. There's around 60 lawmakers who will be asking questions of these mayors today here, Steph.
All right. Thanks so much for your report, Melina. Good to see you as always. And joining us now to discuss President Trump's address to Congress is Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. Good to see you, Mike. Now, what are your initial impressions of Trump's address last night?
Hey, Steph, good to see you as always. Yeah, look, a lot to digest from last night. Not only Elise Slotkin's address and then obviously President Trump's, but then Bernie Sanders gave his own speech as well. So a bunch of mixed speeches out there from last night. But my biggest takeaways is, and again, this is very non-traditional because the president doesn't really give an address until his second year back in office. And I think the speech went exactly how I said it would yesterday on NTD News, Steph. It was a lot of touting successes on the campaign trail and the election win, touting some early successes from the executive orders, although we're going to see how all of these play out in the courts. There's 90 lawsuits filed against the administration from the executive order perspective. And then a lot of, like I said, posturing on certain issues, obviously chastised the Democrats on a bunch of things. I thought actually it was pretty clever, something Democrats would never think to do. It's kind of why Donald Trump won, because he kind of goes rudimentary and very baseline and talks to people the way they should be talked, not the way Democrats talk, which is over people's heads. And so I thought a lot from the speech. There's a lot of misinformation in the speech, to be honest with you, Steph, that needs to be corrected. But overall, like, I thought the president did exactly what I predicted he would do yesterday on this network.
So would you say that Republicans think of this as a success for Trump?
Yeah, I mean, you saw it by the applause breaks, right? And how many times they stood behind him. I think there's a couple things here that can carry over from the speech, Steph. That's the important part. It's not about the words. It's about the actions, right? President Trump has already talked about the executive orders on immigration. This is what he ran on. We just played from a package there that J.D. Vance is going to be visiting the border later this week. He mentioned the Custom Border Patrol agents specifically within his speech. Those are the pivotal things. We need to get more resources to those folks. We need to protect our nation's borders. Democrats that were sitting down, that especially ones that have been on my show that represent Texas, they know that this is a pivotal issue. They know that they're hearing it from their constituents. 12 million people came into the Biden administration into this country from illegal means. How we fix immigration, Steph, is the way that I want the president to start to actually message, which is we need to put people on a pathway to citizenship. We need to take advantage of immigration, people that do want to come here and work for these really low paying jobs, long hours, and they want to help and contribute to the American economy. And they're not, a stain on our society. I shouldn't even say it like that, but that's what we need to focus on. I hope the president starts to pivot some of that from the campaign to this. But the speech last night, I think Republicans will tout a lot of the successes, but it's still too early to tell because it's only 40, 50 days into the current administration.
That's true. And we do see, of course, there's the gold card that Trump has floated, the idea of, $5 million to get a green card. But fixing the immigration system for people who can't afford that. Have you seen any indications of this from the Trump administration, or what would be the challenges or the incentives for doing that?
Well, I think the administration is not looking at it like that, Steph. And again, forget the words. Let's go with actions, right? Their biggest thing has been, and this is from Karoline Leavitt from the White House press secretary, and right from the podium itself. A reporter asked her very simply, how have you guys been distinguishing between immigrants, illegal immigrants that have committed a crime and the ones that haven't committed a crime? And she said, we're not. They've all committed a crime because they're here illegally. That is something that people that work in immigration enforcement, people that work as immigration attorneys that know that some of these are civil cases, to be honest with you. If you violate being here too long in this country and you haven't committed a crime, you're going to turn away people that are going to come to this country that work and do the jobs, everyday jobs that we don't even see, Steph, whether it be stuff in agriculture, whether it be stuff in the construction industry, like my father-in-law, who is a construction manager and hires a lot of workers to work, with him in that industry. Like, it's going to start impacting Americans if we start speaking about immigration the way Karoline Leavitt has spoke about it from the podium of the press secretary's office. So this is where I would hope that the administration starts to wrap their arms around. And again, I think they will. We see it in the town halls that Republicans are getting hammered on, specifically when they go back home and they talk to their constituents. These are things to not disrupt. We need to get people on a pathway to citizenship, especially the ones that are nonviolent criminals that are contributing to this society, that keep everything running for the American people. And I think the administration, I haven't seen a sign from it yet, Steph.
Right. Mike, now looking abroad, last night Trump mentioned the letter from Zelensky, Ukraine's president. And of course, there looks like there could be a pathway forward there. And we're all searching for peace. But Russia, meanwhile, has come out saying that any peace talks will need to include talks about Iran's nuclear development. How do you see the dynamics at play at this point in time?
Yeah, Steph, that's a great question. And I know he addressed the letter, and obviously Zelensky posted something on Twitter, X, for people out there that haven't seen this. With respect to an apology, he also posted a video that you can go watch on YouTube. I highly encourage people to watch that because it's about 20, 25 minutes of him speaking in Ukrainian with subtitles, explaining a little bit of what happened Friday and now kind of the hat in hand. And look, he knows that the United States is a pivotal partner in all of this in order to bring peace, because without the weapons support, munitions, the Ukraine, again, is not getting as much support from European allies as it is from the United States. And I think the quality of the support that they're getting previously from the previous administration to what the Trump administration has just done, which is cut or at least freeze the funding for right now for all foreign aid, he knows that that's going to make a significant dent in being able to withstand Russian aggression. So Donald Trump is approaching this the way that, having spoken to people who've, done business in Russia and in Ukraine on my show, Steph, he's doing this from a non-conventional standpoint. He does want to make a deal, but he's dealing with the aggressor in this situation, which we've all have said, including Vice President Vance in that discussion Friday. Russia invaded Ukraine. Donald Trump feels that he can negotiate with the aggressor first and get the bully off the ledge and then get Ukraine to come to the table. But it's going to require From Ukraine's side, security assurances. From Russia's side, that no peacekeeping troops are on the Ukrainian border. And then what happens with the land in the eastern regions of the Donbass and Donetsk and Uletsk. And so that's why, and I think I mispronounced both of those, but you know what I mean, Steph. Like, it's going to be something where the countries are going to have to decide the land that's already been, fought in this war, who is going to control that territories. It's interesting to see how this is all going to shake out. But right now, this is a lot more progress that's been made than under the Biden administration. That we can easily say for sure.
For sure. And that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for your time today, Mike Leon, as always.
Thanks, Steph.
Next, President Trump marked the end of his first 6 weeks in office with a 1 hour and 40-minute speech to a joint session of Congress, as we've just been speaking about. That was the longest such address on record. The previous record, set by President Bill Clinton in 2000, was 1 hour, 28 minutes. Now, Trump declared in that speech that America is back as he opened his speech and said that the American dream is surging bigger and better than ever before. While the first joint address of a president's term is not only officially a State of the Union, it does serve a similar purpose. But President Trump is reiterating that the U.S. will take in trillions of dollars from tariffs. Now, a number of U.S. retailers are saying they plan to pass on some or all of the cost to consumers. Trump says he has an economic plan that will work out well for the U.S. in the end. His administration says he could make a trade announcement as early as today. Here's more on that.
These tariffs, I think, are hopefully temporary.
President Donald Trump could unveil trade deals with Mexico and Canada as soon as today. That's according to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick speaking to Fox Business. And Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit the southern border. Lutnick says the deals probably won't mean pausing the 25% tariffs on Mexican and nearly all Canadian goods that started yesterday.
All of our wholesalers are letting us know, hey, the prices are going to go up.
Some businesses say they'll have to raise prices due to those tariffs and a now 20% duty on Chinese imports. Target CEO tells CNBC its produce could cost more starting this week, since a lot of it is from Mexico. Best Buy's CEO warns of price hikes too, because it gets many electronics from Mexico and China. Other retailers echo those statements.
We're going to have to raise our prices.
The impact to the vehicle is anywhere from $8,000 to even $12,000 per vehicle.
Mexico's president says she plans to announce retaliatory measures Sunday. Canada is imposing a 25% tariff on some U.S. goods now, with plans to include more later.
We will be united, and we will fight back, and we will win.
Some Trump voters say they hope he'll keep his campaign promise to lower prices.
And I'm willing to give him the time because I feel he'll be able to do it.
The United Auto Workers Union said it supported President Trump's tariffs in a statement yesterday. The union said they were glad to see Trump take what they call an aggressive action on ending the free trade disaster. This is after UAW accused corporations of prioritizing foreign manufacturing over domestic production. About 150,000 members work for the big three automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, who all face steep increases to costs after yesterday's tariffs. Now, breaking news. The Justice Department earlier today unsealed indictments charging 12 Chinese nationals, accusing them of participating in Beijing-backed espionage activities. They include Chinese hackers and Chinese intelligence officials. And a joint effort by the Justice Department, State Department, FBI, Treasury, and Naval Criminal Investigative Service, the State Department announced a reward of up to $2 million for information leading to the arrest or conviction of 2 of the Chinese nationals. The Treasury sanctioned one of the Chinese data brokers and a Shanghai-based company. The government has taken control of all of his U.S. properties and interests. According to the DOJ press release, victims of these Chinese hacking operations include a New York-based newspaper that publishes critics of the Chinese Communist Party, a religious group based in the U.S., and several U.S. governmental agencies, such as the Intelligence Agency under the Pentagon and the Commerce Department. Several Asian countries' foreign ministries are among the targets. We'll keep you posted as the case develops. The Supreme Court is considering whether the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has the authority to issue licenses for nuclear waste storage. The government and a company that was awarded a license to operate a nuclear waste storage facility in western Texas have appealed a ruling that declared it unlawful. A Texas-based oil and gas extraction organization and a nonprofit organization challenged the company's license. Texas and New Mexico later joined the challenge, arguing the facility posed environmental risks to the states. An appeals court found the Nuclear Regulatory Commission lacked authority to issue the license. Both the Biden and Trump administrations have argued this disrupts nuclear energy operations as it leaves nowhere to store nuclear waste. The two states argue that the Yucca Mountains in Nevada already present a solution, but that facility has been held up in decades of legal opposition. A ruling in the case is expected by the end of June. The Trump administration wants to drop a lawsuit from the Biden administration. It would have made it legal for Idaho healthcare practitioners to perform abortions requested as emergency care. Idaho's Defense of Life Act forbids abortions except when necessary to prevent the death of the pregnant woman or during the first trimester when the pregnancy was caused by rape or incest. Performing an abortion otherwise can lead to 5 years in prison and result in the revocation of a medical doctor's license. The Biden administration argued that Idaho's law violates federal law, which requires hospitals accepting Medicare to provide stabilizing care in emergency rooms. It argued stabilizing care includes abortion if requested. Idaho says its state law allows for abortions in life-threatening situations, but argues the Biden administration was trying to improperly expand its exceptions. And a federal judge has blocked President Trump from firing the Democratic chair of a U.S. agency. The agency handles appeals from fired or disciplined federal employees. U.S. District Judge Rudolph Contreras ruled that Trump cannot remove Kathy Harris from the Merit Systems Protection Board without cause before her term expires in 3 years. He said the agency's mission requires independence. The three-member board plays a key role in reviewing federal job disputes, a position that could become critical as Trump moves to shrink the federal workforce. The administration argued that firing restrictions encroach on the president's authority. But the judge cited a 90-year-old Supreme Court ruling limiting a president's power to remove certain agency heads. The Trump administration is appealing that decision. A court will also hear an oral argument today in a New York City case against the Trump administration. The case centers on FEMA money used to house illegal immigrants being taken back. The Trump administration has released a list of hundreds of federal buildings it intends to sell or close. The list was published yesterday, and it originally included some big names, such as the FBI headquarters and the Maine Justice Department building, the old post office building where President Trump once ran a hotel, and the American Red Cross headquarters. Hours later, the General Services Administration published a revised list with none of the Washington, D.C. buildings on it. The final list includes buildings in Indiana, Atlanta, and San Francisco, as well as the U.S. mission to the United States in New York. The list has 320 buildings in total. The Trump administration has deemed these buildings not core to government operations. The General Services Administration did not respond to questions about why properties had been removed from the original list. Some heavy weather across parts of the country. Texas battered by fierce winds and a tornado, leaving a trail of destruction in Oklahoma as a storm system moves across the U.S. Eyewitness video from Ada, Oklahoma shows uprooted trees, damaged roofs, and debris strewn across the road. The tornado touched down early yesterday morning. According to the National Weather Service, it reached peak winds of 100 to 105 miles per hour and lasted around 4 minutes. In Louisville, Texas, a powerful storm destroyed a paint warehouse. Eyewitness footage captured the building's missing walls and collapsed roof. And no relief for the Pacific coast as storm started to hit California last night. The National Weather Service says it could bring cooler temperatures, thunderstorms, and also weak tornadoes. Still to come, Denmark's foreign minister reacts to President Trump's comments on Greenland during last night's address to Congress. Greenlanders will head to the polls next week for parliamentary elections. And the U.S. pauses intelligence sharing with Ukraine, a move that limits Ukraine's ability to target Russian forces. Russia, meanwhile, said future talks with the U.S. will include discussion on Iran's nuclear program. Beijing pledging to increase its defense budget by more than 7% this year. China's military spending remains the second largest in the world, right behind the U.S.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowners insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjian Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
I'm Stephanie Cox, and this is World Watch. Denmark's foreign minister welcomes Trump's Greenland comments. Britain says it's monitoring a new Russian warship sailing through the English Channel. And Israel has a new military chief. Denmark's foreign minister was positive today about President Trump's comments on Greenland during his address to Congress. Nevertheless, the Danish government has said the Arctic island is not for sale.
First of all, I would like to draw the attention to the fact that he said we respect the Greenlandics' right to self-determination, and that, I think, was the most important part of that speech. And I am very optimistic about what will be a Greenlandic decision about this.
Made a direct appeal to Greenlanders in his speech to Congress yesterday. As Trump put it, we will keep you safe, we will make you rich, and together we will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. That was Trump speaking just now. The island's prime minister declared today that Greenland cannot be taken or purchased, and he said Greenlanders head to the polls for parliamentary elections next week. Britain's Royal Navy said today it monitored a Russian warship and merchant vessel this week on a voyage through the English Channel and North Sea. HMS Somerset tracked the suspected Russian spy ship Yantar in January, while the Royal Navy ships last month tracked 6 Russian naval and merchant ships carrying ammunition used in Syria through the channel. Britain's Times newspaper published pictures yesterday showing sailors manning machine guns on the Russian warship. It escorted a vessel sanctioned by the U.S. for transporting weapons on behalf of the Russian military. Israel's new military chief of staff took command today at a ceremony in Tel Aviv. The event took place following the resignation of an outgoing lieutenant general over the military's failure to prevent the Hamas deadly 2023 terror attack on October 7th. Eyal Zamir became Israel's 24th military chief. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz attended the ceremony. General Michael Kurilla, head of the U.S. Central Command, was in attendance as well. The change of command comes amid a fragile ceasefire in Gaza. Fighting is likely to resume without an agreement to bring home the rest of the hostages still held by Hamas. Ash Wednesday services are underway around the world, including in Vatican City, where Pope Francis remains hospitalized. The 88-year-old pontiff is battling double pneumonia. The Vatican said yesterday he's in stable condition after episodes of acute respiratory failure on Monday. The Vatican says the Pope is alert and cooperative and has been receiving high-flow oxygen therapy. A cardinal performed Ash Wednesday services in Vatican City. The United States has paused intelligence sharing with Ukraine, a move that will limit Ukraine's ability to target Russian forces. It follows Monday's pause on military aid. Russia, meanwhile, said future talks with the U.S. would include discussions on Iran's nuclear program. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has the story for us.
CIA Director John Ratcliffe on Wednesday said the U.S. has halted intelligence sharing with Ukraine. The move could seriously hamper the Ukrainian military's ability to target Russian forces. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz told reporters Wednesday morning.
We have taken a step back and are pausing and reviewing all aspects of this relationship.
Since the start of the war in 2022, the U.S. has provided Ukraine with significant intelligence, including critical information its military needs for targeting purposes. Waltz also said the U.S. was actively engaged in talks with Ukraine on a minerals deal and a potential peace deal with Russia.
I think we're going to see movement in very short order.
Waltz, in an interview with Fox and Friends, said President Trump will consider restoring military aid to Ukraine if peace talks are arranged and confidence-building measures are taken. Trump halted the aid on Monday. On Tuesday night, Trump said he had received a letter from Ukrainian President Zelensky that expressed willingness to come to the negotiating table. Waltz said officials were in discussions over a date, location, and negotiating team that would lead to an end to the war, and are already talking about confidence-building measures to then take to the Russians. The Kremlin on Wednesday said that future talks between Russia and the United States would include discussion on Iran's nuclear program, a subject spokesman Dmitry Peskov said had been touched upon in an initial round of US-Russia talks last month.
Russia's position is that the issue of Iran's nuclear dossier needs to be solved only through political and diplomatic means. In our view, there is potential for it.
Trump last month restored his maximum pressure campaign on Iran, which includes efforts to drive its oil exports down to zero in order to stop Tehran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Iran denies any such intention. Russia has deepened its ties with the Islamic Republic since the start of the Ukraine war and signed a strategic cooperation treaty with Iran in January. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
Thank you, Malcolm. The Chinese Communist Party says it would increase defense spending more than 7% this year. The rate is the same as last year, but far below the double-digit percentage increase of the years prior, a sign that China's reeling economy has not kept up with the regime's ambitions. China's military spending remains the second largest in the world, right behind the U.S., though China already has the world's largest navy. The Chinese regime has been upping its aggression in recent years. In the South China Sea, Beijing's Coast Guard ships have rammed into Filipino boats. To the east, the Chinese Navy has been staging drills near Taiwan, sending ships into waters near Japan. In the Pacific, Chinese and Russian bombers were in a joint patrol in the airspace near Alaska in 2024. Now, joining us to break down President Trump's address to Congress last night and some of the developments since is Jeff Bloodworth, professor of modern American political history at Gannon University, which is in Pennsylvania. Good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, it's been called a historic speech, and it's the longest speech so far of its kind. But how would you say it compares to other presidential addresses throughout history?
this was the strongest State of the Union address. I mean, officially it's not a State of the Union address, but it was. And I think it was the strongest State of the Union address since Bill Clinton in the 1990s. Donald Trump just commanded the room and commanded the stage. You don't have to be a fan of Donald Trump to recognize that it was a class in how politics and presidential politics can be done.
And we just heard just before this interview here some developments around the Russia-Ukraine war. The U.S. Pausing intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Of course, last night, Trump did read out some of the letter that he received from Zelensky, suggesting there could be a path forward to negotiations, further negotiations, which had also been paused. And Russia is now weighing in with extra requirements in their side of the negotiations. Where does all this stand when we look back through history? It does seem like we're on the precipice of something big. Trump himself had said you're playing with World War III during that confrontation with Zelensky not so long ago. How do you see this moment in history?
Well, I don't see this as the precipice of World War III, but I do believe, and this is obvious if you study history, this is the Republican Party returning to its pre-World War II stance of non-intervention, especially in European affairs. I mean, this is a bipartisan stance, and again, you don't have to support it. You can want America to support Ukraine, but it is clear that in the 18th and 19th century, American policy, really until World War II, was non-intervention in European affairs. And World War II and the Great Depression and the Holocaust changed that calculus, and then there was a bipartisan consensus. And so Donald Trump, in a real sense, I mean, this is the Republican Party returning to, in many ways, what it is its true north. I'm not sure this is personal, thinks this redounds to America's national security benefit. We will see how this plays out. One does not know. But, this is certainly in line with the history of the Republican Party and American foreign policy history. And one does not have to support Donald Trump's views in order to recognize that central reality.
Now, early in his speech, Trump actually compared himself to George Washington and said that many believe that this first month of Trump's second term has been the most successful start to a presidency in U.S. history. You're saying that this, so far, is almost like a shift back to the policies and the approach of the U.S., at least in international relations. How do these early days more broadly of the Trump administration fare compared to previous administrations?
It's a good question. So the George Washington stuff, that's typical, Donald Trump, kind of hyperbole. But this is, right, a challenge to Franklin Roosevelt. I mean, Franklin Roosevelt famously created the benchmark of the 100 days, right, the first 100 days of your presidency. And Donald Trump is not only challenging that, what Trump's actions are a challenge to reverse, what we call the New Deal order. This was a bipartisan consensus domestically. I mean, heck, Ronald Reagan even never went this far. And again, that's not a critique of Donald Trump. It's not support of Donald Trump. That is just historical reality. And this is what Donald Trump is attempting to do, is to challenge Franklin Roosevelt to, very much change the nature of America's relationship to the federal government. I mean, Donald Trump is, and I've written about this and others have, I mean, in a very real way, the basic policies, if not his posture and rhetoric and behavior at times, is that of a 1920s Republican. And, that's not saying he's old fashioned or these are necessarily even dated ideas, but one can draw a line. That's the point. And that's just a basic reality that to us, these seem like shocking and out of left field. But, look, you look to 100 years ago and, Trump's policies against free trade and non-interventionism, that was standard Republican policy in 1920s America.
That's it. That's what I wanted to come to next. Now, Trump has said that his trade policies will remain centered around tariffs, even describing it as a source of a new external revenue service for the country. And of course, tariffs have a unique place in American history. You mentioned the 1920s. What has been that essential debate around tariffs when it comes to America and America's identity and history?
Look, people forget, 125 years ago, tariffs were the hot political issue that separated Democrats from Republicans. So, hey, they're back. Look, most economists don't agree with Donald Trump on his tariff policies. I question how much he's actually going to pursue these tariffs. But this, again, the Republican Party was historically the party of the strong tariff. And that's just a reality. I mean, there was things in the speeches referring to farmers and tariffs, and that kind of flew in the face of reality. Farmers are exporters. I mean, they need global markets for their goods. They don't just need domestic markets. Be that as it may, what is old is new again. And, William McKinley and Donald Trump are different in personality and in style, but it's interesting that, there's some similarities in their policies. That this is the recessive gene in the Republican Party, being against free trade, being against, intervention in European affairs, wanting to have less immigration, not more. This is a recessive gene in the Republican Party and the conservative movement that had been recessive since really 1945. And now it's returned. The World War II generation is over. And so it's a healthy fight. This is the sort of thing that Americans should be debating about, whether this is the way forward. That's not a defense of some of the behavior of Republicans and Democrats in the State of the Union address last night, which was less than adult. But I mean, this is a normal debate, and we should be having it.
For sure. And so glad to have you weighing in on it with us. Thank you so much for your time today. Jeff Bloodworth, Professor of Modern American Political History at Gannon University. That's all we have time for, but we hope to get you back. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
And we're going over to Kevin Hogan at the Data Hub to learn exactly how much money the U.S. and the world have given Ukraine.
So first, we're going to start with the spending related to the Ukraine war. Again, this is not necessarily going to Ukraine, but this is total spending of the United States in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So according to the Congressional Budget Office, as of September 2024, that stands right about $175 billion. So if you ask the Inspector General that's been following this, Operation Atlantic Resolve, that number is very similar, just about $180 billion. So those pretty reliable numbers that you're going to get right there. Now, the Defense Secretary, Hegseth, has said that the United States has sent north of $300 billion to Ukraine. So not exactly sure what would be included in all of that. And President Trump, an even higher number, $350 billion. Now that may be part of the reason why there was a heated exchange with President Zelensky saying one number, Trump saying something else. So anyway, that's the breakdown. So you can see there's a lot of variation here between these numbers. But again, the Congressional Budget Office would probably know, because they're the ones that are controlling the purse and they're the ones that allocated all this money. So now at the same time, you want to ask, well, how much money has actually gone to supporting Ukraine as opposed to other things? Well, here you have a series of 5 bills in a couple years after the war started, and that amounted to $175 billion, or just over that, which we just covered. But some of that money went elsewhere, and, U.S. funding of other militaries around the world, and also surge funding, but also this number right here. That's your big story right there. $106 billion has actually gone to Ukraine from the United States National Treasury. Again, that's not money that they've received just yet. It's just money that has been earmarked or appropriated to be sent to Ukraine. So that's what Zelensky is referring to. You may remember back in early February, Zelensky said that his country has only got around $75 billion. And they said, okay, well, where's the other $100 billion? Well, that's just because all that money is not necessarily sent to Ukraine, but is involved in the Ukraine war as a whole, right? So we're going to look at another angle on this. This is the actual funding of the breakdown of the spending in response to Russia's war. Again, now you have a big portion of this. I mean, this is $45 billion. This is replenishing the stockpiles. So again, this is American money spent in America to replenish all those stocks that were reduced from the Presidential Drawdown Authority and other things like that. And then you have military support. This is United States military support. Again, about $45 billion. This could be surge protection, more troops in the NATO members, the eastern flank there. And then you have, of course, other, and then this is economic aid to Ukraine. Again, you're talking $34 billion and foreign military support, as well as Ukraine security. So if you just take out the economic support and other, you actually see that Ukraine is only getting about a quarter of the total money that is spent for military purposes from the United States. So a lot of it is being spent in the United States itself, right? So now we're going to talk about the global money flow surrounding all of this, because again, G7 nations, the EU, they have also contributed, right? So what you see right here is that the United States and the European Union are the big funders of Ukraine. And again, this is the Ukraine war where all this money is flowing to, because it's not all going to Ukraine itself. But the U.S. grant money, that's $163 billion. That is not a loan. That is just money that the United States pays out and is not expecting to receive back. So that's a big area that President Trump has been focusing on and trying to get minerals deals and other things like that, because that's a lot of money that the United States gave without any return, of course. So in terms of financial aspect. But now the European Union, look at this, they have given about $94 billion in grants to Ukraine or involved in the war, but they've also sent $51 billion in loans. So that's money that their countries would eventually receive back. And again, this doesn't include the G7 loan agreement here, which includes $20 billion from the United States and the European Union and $10 billion from other countries, right? So the United States, as you can see, does not have any loans outside of that G7. So in these loan categories, it's mostly coming from the EU and other nations. This would be like Canada and so forth. Again, they're appropriating money in response to the Ukraine war. But we ask, what is the American sentiment about the U.S. funding for this war? And you're going to probably see some shifting trends here. We're going to look at this a little bit more closely, right? So according to Pew Research Center, the Americans who think that the U.S. support of Ukraine is not enough actually had a rapid drop off right about the first couple months after the war started. So it was a 40% more, and then it reduced down to about 20% right there. And then it kind of leveled off, and it has gone to something similar, something about 22% right now as of February this year. But now when you look at the Americans who think that the United States has given too much aid to Ukraine, you see in the beginning that was less than 10%. It shot up into the first year of the war, but then now recently it's basically just kind of grown a little bit or basically held steady at that rate. So what you're seeing is that number of Americans who thought that we were given too much has actually over quadrupled over the course of this war. So and if you include the people who are not sure, I mean, this is a 3-year war. It could be a war of attrition by some accounts. You have people who think that the U.S. is spending too much, or who are either unsure, a little bit of uncertainty, or they have no response. Maybe they're indifferent at this point. That number is growing. That's basically doubling over time. Now, the Americans who think that it's not enough or about right, again, that is shrinking over time. So this is either going to people who think it's too much, or if it's or if they're unsure. But again, the not enough, again, that's coming from 40% all the way down to about 20. So that's cut basically in half. So that's a recap of the sentiment and the cash flow surrounding the Ukraine war. Back to you.
Stay with us, and we'll be broadcasting the White House press briefing right after this break.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I've felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Reve Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy one, get two free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters? It's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises. Just try it. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling. I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. The Justice Department charged a slew of Chinese cyber actors and intelligence officials, accusing them of espionage attacks against U.S. government agencies, news organizations, and a faith group. We have the details. President Trump makes a major announcement on the war against terror and reads an unexpected letter from Ukrainian President Zelensky, highlights from his speech to a joint session of Congress, and how Democrats responded. The Supreme Court deals a blow to Trump's pause on foreign aid. Payments for completed work must resume. Vice President J.D. Vance heads to Eagle Pass, Texas today. He'll be joined by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Mayors of 4 U.S. cities are on Capitol Hill. Republicans pressed them on their sanctuary city policies and non-cooperation with Trump's mass deportation plans.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today's Wednesday, March 5th. I'm Stephanie Cox. Breaking news, the Justice Department earlier today unsealed indictments charging 12 Chinese nationals, accusing them of participating in Beijing-backed espionage activities. They include Chinese hackers and Chinese intelligence officials. It's a joint effort by the Justice Department, State Department, FBI, Treasury, and Naval Criminal Investigative Service. The State Department announced a reward of up to $2 million for information leading to the arrest or conviction of 2 of the Chinese nationals. The Treasury sanctioned one of the Chinese data brokers and his Shanghai-based company. The government has taken control of all of his U.S. properties and interests. According to the DOJ press release, victims of these Chinese hacking operations include a New York-based newspaper that publishes critics of the Chinese Communist Party, a religious group based in the U.S., and several U.S. governmental agencies, such as the Intelligence Agency under the Pentagon and the Commerce Department. Several Asian countries' foreign ministries are among the targets. We'll keep you posted as the case develops. The U.S. will impose visa restrictions on foreign officials who assist illegal immigrants. A statement from Secretary of State Marco Rubio says this new policy will affect airport, port, customs, and immigration officials in other countries. That's if they knowingly facilitate the transit of illegal immigrants into the U.S. via the southwest border. Rubio said officials who fail to enforce immigration laws or establish policies that facilitate the entry of illegal immigrants will also be targeted. And more on President Trump's speech to a joint session of Congress. Trump tackled tariffs, international cooperation on energy, the fight against terror, and the war in Ukraine. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the key takeaways.
The President of the United States.
President Trump called for an end to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, making a direct appeal for peace.
It's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war.
Trump called out Europeans for what he sees as not pulling their weight.
Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine, by far.
The president said he received a letter from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier in the day, stating Ukraine is ready to negotiate for lasting peace.
He said, "My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts."
Zelensky also signaled Ukraine's willingness to sign agreements on minerals and security.
Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful?
The president also tackled energy, highlighting international cooperation on a major energy initiative.
My administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each.
South Korea's industry minister confirmed Tuesday that Seoul and Washington will form a working group to discuss the pipeline, energy, shipbuilding, tariffs, and trade barriers. Turning to trade, Trump reaffirmed his commitment to tariffs, saying they will boost foreign investment in the U.S. and reduce the trade deficit.
Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries.
He said reciprocal tariffs will be imposed on any nation that levies fees on American products.
Countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair.
A series of tariffs, including 25% fees on goods from Canada and Mexico, and 20% in addition to those already imposed on China, took effect on Tuesday, and reciprocal tariffs are set to take effect on April 2nd.
Whatever they tax us, we will tax them. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer.
While critics warned tariffs could fuel inflation, Trump dismissed those concerns, calling any impact temporary. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said tariff negotiations with Canada and Mexico hinge on addressing the fentanyl crisis, with an announcement expected as early as Wednesday.
Fentanyl deaths in America need to come down, right? It's black and white.
China responded sharply to the new tariffs, with a spokesperson posting on X, "If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end." Moving on to the fight against terrorism, Trump also made a major announcement regarding the 2021 Abbey Gate bombing in Afghanistan that killed 13 U.S. service members.
Tonight I am pleased to announce that we have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice.
Officials have identified the senior member of the branch of the ISIS terror group based in Afghanistan as Mohammed Sharifullah. Trump said Sharifullah was turned over to U.S. authorities by Pakistan. From a major energy project to Ukraine peace talks, Trump's address signals significant change ahead. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Senator Alyssa Slotkin delivered the Democratic rebuttal to President Trump's address to Congress last night. She called for a solution to what she describes as a broken immigration system. NTD's Daniel Monahan with that report.
Senator Slotkin acknowledged that America wants change.
But there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way.
Slotkin says Trump has talked a big game on the economy, but says people need to read the fine print.
Grocery and home prices are going up, not down. and he hasn't laid out a credible plan to deal with either of those. His tariffs on allies like Canada will raise prices on energy, lumber, and cars.
On immigration, Slotkin said securing the border without fixing the immigration system is dealing with the symptom and not the disease.
America is a nation of immigrants. We need a functional system keyed to the needs of our economy that allows vetted people to come and work here legally.
Congressman Al Green was removed from the House chamber after disrupting President Trump's address. About 4 minutes into the speech, Green rose to speak and shook his cane toward the president. He continued his disruptions despite repeated warnings, prompting House Speaker Mike Johnson to order his removal. Some Democratic lawmakers wore pink to Trump's address. Representative Doris Matsui of California posted on X that she was wearing pink, quote, to protest Trump betraying women and families for his billionaire buddies. Members of Congress reacted to Trump's speech afterwards.
They should be defending against this idea that the presidents can impound billions and billions of dollars and shut down departments without being held accountable.
What happened in the White House a couple of days ago saw so many people disavowing it from both sides of the aisle.
Viewers overwhelmingly approved of Trump's address. A CBS News poll found that 76% approved of the speech, with 23% disapproving. CBS noted the majority of viewers were Republican at 51%, with 27% Independent and 20% Democrat. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Supreme Court ruled today that the Trump administration must resume payments to foreign aid organizations for work they've already done. The High Court's 5-4 decision upholds an order to release funding for contractors at the U.S. Agency for International Development and the State Department. Aid organizations said in a Supreme Court filing they would face extraordinary and irreversible harm if the funding freeze continues. President Trump is pursuing what he called an America First agenda, ordering a 90-day pause on all foreign aid on his first day back in office. Trump and Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk continue to search for and cut what they say is waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. A new development in the 2021 terror attack in Kabul, Afghanistan, which killed 13 American service members. Bombing suspect Mohammed Sharifullah was captured overseas. The Department of Justice said Sharifullah has been charged with providing and conspiring to provide material support for terrorism. The department added that a hearing is scheduled at a federal court in Virginia later today. And the Trump administration says more funding is needed to support its crackdown on illegal immigration. Border Czar Tom Homan said yesterday that additional resources, including more detention beds, enforcement tools, and deportation flights, are essential. Homan acknowledged the cost is significant, but called it a one-time expense. He contrasted the costs with ongoing taxpayer-funded services like education and health care for illegal immigrants. The number of encounters with illegal immigrants at the U.S.-Mexico border has dropped sharply since Trump entered the Oval Office. Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit Eagle Pass, Texas today to assess the Texas-Mexico border. Vance will be the highest-ranking official to travel to the border town under Trump's current administration. He will be joined by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Trump marked the end of his first 6 weeks in office with that 1 hour and 40-minute speech to a joint session of Congress. That was the longest such address on record. The previous record, set by President Bill Clinton in 2000, was 1 hour and 28 minutes. Trump declared America is back as he opened his speech and said the American dream is surging bigger and better than ever before. While the first joint address of the president's term is not typically a State of the Union, it serves a similar purpose. President Donald Trump is reiterating that the U.S. will take in trillions of dollars from tariffs. Now, a number of U.S. retailers are saying they plan to pass on some or all of the cost to consumers. Trump says he has an economic plan that will work out well for the U.S. in the end. His administration says he could make a trade announcement as early as today. Here's more on that.
These tariffs, I think, are hopefully temporary.
President Donald Trump could unveil trade deals with Mexico and Canada as soon as today. That's according to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick speaking to Fox Business. And Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit the southern border. Lutnick says the deals probably won't mean pausing the 25% tariffs on Mexican and nearly all Canadian goods that started yesterday.
All of our wholesalers are letting us know, hey, the prices are going to go up.
Some businesses say they'll have to raise prices due to those tariffs and a now 20% duty on Chinese imports. Target CEO tells CNBC its produce could cost more starting this week, since a lot of it is from Mexico. Best Buy CEO warns of price hikes too, because it gets many electronics from Mexico and China. Other retailers echo those statements.
We're going to have to raise our prices.
The impact to the vehicle is anywhere from $8,000 to even $12,000 per vehicle.
Mexico's president says she plans to announce retaliatory measures Sunday. Canada is imposing a 25% tariff on some U.S. goods now, with plans to include more later.
We will be united, and we will fight back, and we will win.
Some Trump voters say they hope he'll keep his campaign promise to lower prices.
I'm willing to give him the time because I feel he'll be able to do it.
The United Auto Workers Union said it supported President Trump's tariffs in a statement yesterday. The union said they were glad to see Trump take what they call an aggressive action on ending the free trade disaster. This is after UAW accused corporations of prioritizing foreign manufacturing over domestic production. About 150,000 members work for the big three automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, who all face steep increases to costs after yesterday's tariffs. The Supreme Court is considering whether the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has the authority to issue licenses for nuclear waste storage. The government and a company that was awarded a license to operate a nuclear waste storage facility in western Texas have appealed a ruling that declared it unlawful. A Texas-based oil and gas extraction organization and a nonprofit organization challenged the company's license. Texas and New Mexico later joined the challenge, arguing the facility posed environmental risks to the states. An appeals court found the Nuclear Regulatory Commission lacked authority to issue the license. Both the Biden and Trump administrations have argued this disrupts nuclear energy operations as it leaves nowhere to store nuclear waste. The two states argue that the Yucca Mountains in Nevada already present such a solution. But that facility has been held up in decades of legal opposition. A ruling in the case is expected by the end of June. The Trump administration wants to drop a lawsuit from the Biden administration. It would have made it legal for Idaho healthcare practitioners to perform abortions requested as emergency care. Idaho's Defense of Life Act forbids abortions except when necessary to prevent the death of the pregnant woman, or during the first trimester when the pregnancy was caused by rape or incest. Performing an abortion otherwise can lead to 5 years in prison and result in the revocation of a medical doctor's license. The Biden administration argued that Idaho's law violates federal law, which requires hospitals accepting Medicare to provide stabilizing care in emergency rooms. It argued stabilizing care includes abortion if requested. Idaho says its state law allows for abortions in life-threatening situations, but argues the Biden administration was trying to improperly expand its exceptions. And a federal judge has blocked President Trump from firing the Democratic chair of a U.S. agency. The agency handles appeals from fired or disciplined federal employees. U.S. District Judge Rudolph Contreras ruled that Trump cannot remove Kathy Harris from the Merit Systems Protection Board without cause before her term expires in 3 years. He said the agency's mission requires independence. The three-member board plays a key role in reviewing federal job disputes, a position that could become critical as Trump moves to shrink the federal workforce. The administration argued that firing restrictions encroach on the president's authority. But the judge cited a 90-year-old Supreme Court ruling limiting a president's power to remove certain agency heads. The Trump administration is appealing the decision. A court will also hear an oral argument today in a New York City case against the Trump administration. The case centers on FEMA money used to house illegal immigrants being taken back. The Trump administration has released a list of hundreds of federal buildings it intends to sell or close. The list was published yesterday, and it originally included some big names, such as the FBI headquarters and the Maine Justice Department building, the old post office building where President Trump once ran a hotel, and the American Red Cross headquarters. Hours later, the General Services Administration published a revised list with none of the Washington, D.C. buildings on it. The final list includes buildings in Indiana, Atlanta, and San Francisco, as well as the U.S. mission to the United Nations in New York. The list has 320 buildings in total. The Trump administration has deemed these buildings not core to government operations. The General Services Administration did not respond to questions about why properties had been removed from the original list. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump invited numerous guests to last night's joint address to Congress. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on who the president welcomed.
Last night, President Trump turned to relatives of Laken Riley. The nursing student was murdered last year in Georgia while on a run.
Laken was stolen from us by a savage illegal alien gang member. With us this evening are Laken's beloved mother, Allison, and her sister, Lauren.
Trump also signed an executive order renaming a national wildlife refuge in Galveston in memory of a 12-year-old allegedly killed by 2 illegal immigrants. The girl's mother, Alexis, was in the gallery.
Moments ago, I formally renamed that refuge in loving memory of your beautiful daughter, Jocelyn. So, Mr. Vice President, if you would, may I have the order?
Another notable guest included DJ Daniel. The president had a surprise for the 13-year-old who is battling brain cancer.
I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
Joining us now to discuss President Trump's address to Congress is Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. Good to see you, Mike. Now, what are your initial impressions of Trump's address last night?
Hey, Steph, good to see you as always. Yeah, look, a lot to digest from last night. Not only Elise Slotkin's address and then obviously President Trump's, but then Bernie Sanders gave his own speech as well. So a bunch of mixed speeches out there from last night. But my biggest takeaways is, and again, this is very non-traditional because the president doesn't really give an address until his second year back in office. And I think the speech went exactly how I said it would yesterday on NTD News, Steph. It was a lot of touting successes on the campaign trail and the election win, touting some early successes from the executive orders, although we're going to see how all of these play out in the courts. There's 90 lawsuits filed against the administration from the executive order perspective. And then a lot of, like I said, posturing on certain issues, obviously chastised the Democrats on a bunch of things. I thought actually it was pretty clever, something Democrats would never think to do. It's kind of why Donald Trump won, because he kind of goes rudimentary and very baseline and talks to people the way they should be talked, not the way Democrats talk, which is over people's heads. And so I thought a lot from the speech. There's a lot of misinformation in the speech, to be honest with you, Steph, that needs to be corrected. But overall, like, I thought the president did exactly what I predicted he would do yesterday on this network.
So would you say that Republicans think of this as a success for Trump?
Yeah, I mean, you saw it by the applause breaks, right? And how many times they stood behind him. I think there's a couple things here that can carry over from the speech, Steph. That's the important part. It's not about the words. It's about the actions, right? President Trump has already talked about the executive orders on immigration. This is what he ran on. We just played from a package there that J.D. Vance is going to be visiting the border later this week. He mentioned the Custom Border Patrol agents specifically within his speech. Those are the pivotal things. We need to get more resources to those folks. We need to protect our nation's borders. Democrats that were sitting down, that especially ones that have been on my show that represent Texas, they know that this is a pivotal issue. They know that they're hearing it from their constituents. 12 million people came into the Biden administration into this country from illegal means. How we fix immigration, Steph, is the way that I want the president to start to actually message, which is we need to put people on a pathway to citizenship. We need to take advantage of immigration, people that do want to come here and work for these really low paying jobs, long hours, and they want to help and contribute to the American economy. And they're not, a stain on our society. I shouldn't even say it like that, but that's what we need to focus on. I hope the president starts to pivot some of that from the campaign to this. But the speech last night, I think Republicans will tout a lot of the successes, but it's still too early to tell because it's only 40, 50 days into the current administration.
That's true. And we do see, of course, there's the gold card that Trump has floated, the idea of, $5 million to get a green card. But fixing the immigration system for people who can't afford that, Have you seen any indications of this from the Trump administration, or what would be the challenges or the incentives for doing that?
Well, I think the administration is not looking at it like that, Steph. Like, and again, forget the words. Let's go with actions, right? Their biggest thing has been, and this is from Karoline Leavitt from the White House press secretary, and right from the podium itself. A reporter asked her very simply, how have you guys been distinguishing between immigrants, illegal immigrants that have committed a crime and the ones that haven't committed a crime? And she said, we're not. They've all committed a crime because they're here illegally. That is something that people that work in immigration enforcement, people that work as immigration attorneys that know that some of these are civil cases, to be honest with you. If you violate being here too long in this country and you haven't committed a crime, you're going to turn away people that are going to come to this country that work and do the jobs, everyday jobs that we don't even see.
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt is now addressing the media. Let's tune into the press briefing.
Was watching approved of President Trump's speech last night. The president spoke about how he's taken more than 400 executive actions on his key promises. The expectations were high, and President Trump is exceeding them. According to brand new polling from the Daily Mail, President Trump has never been more popular as his approval ratings are reaching historic highs. More Americans believe America is headed in the right direction than the wrong direction. Everyday Americans love this president because he tells it like it is, no matter what, and he did that last night. President Trump level set with the American people on the economy and exposed how badly Joe Biden screwed it up by causing the worst inflation crisis in 4 decades. President Trump was honest about where we are while making clear that help is on the way. As the president declared last night, he will make America affordable again. Last night, you also saw who motivates the president to work so hard. Everyday Americans, who President Trump shined a spotlight on last night in his speech. From Mark Fogel, who President Trump was finally able to reunite with his family and his beautiful 95-year-old mother after being detained in Russia, to Peyton McNabb, whose heart-wrenching story motivated President Trump to end men in women's sports, and to Allison and Lauren Phillips, the mother and daughter and sister of Laken Riley, who President Trump honored by signing the Laken Riley Act to ensure her name will live on forever. In other amazing and surprise moments, President Trump honored the life of Jocelyn Nungare, who was brutally murdered by illegal alien gang members. He ensured Jocelyn will never be forgotten by renaming a national wildlife refuge in her home state of Texas to honor her life. And in one of the greatest surprise moments of the night, DJ Daniel, an incredible 13-year-old boy who is beating brain cancer, saw his dreams fulfilled by President Trump when he was made an honorary Secret Service agent. And finally, after nearly 4 years, President Trump delivered justice for the families of the 13 American heroes who were killed at Abbey Gate in the Biden-botched Afghanistan withdrawal, which was one of the worst humiliations in the history of our country. President Trump announced that we have detained Mohammed Sharifullah, the monster who was responsible for that horrific attack, and he was delivered to Dulles Airfield earlier this morning. On his first day in office, President Trump's national security team across the federal government prioritized intelligence gathering to locate this evil individual. President Trump's team shared intelligence with regional partners such as Pakistan, who helped identify this monster in the borderland area late last month. Mohammed confessed to his crimes related to Abbey Gate and other attacks in Russia and Iran as well to the Pakistanis. And U.S. law enforcement officers traveled to Pakistan over the weekend, where he again confessed his crimes to the FBI. As President Trump said last night, this killer will now face the swift sword of American justice for these atrocities right here on United States soil. Joe Biden was responsible for this botched withdrawal, and he had 3 years to find this evil terrorist, and he didn't even try to get the job done. But President Trump campaigned on behalf of and grew very close to the Gold Star families. He promised them accountability, and last night, he kept his promise. He spoke to those Gold Star families yesterday, ahead of his speech, in an incredibly heartwarming call to share this incredible news. And as President Trump asked in his speech last night, how could anyone possibly be opposed to any of this action that he is taking? Well, apparently, the modern-day Democrat Party could. The behavior of Democrats last night was completely disgraceful and demonstrated how severely out of touch they are with the American public. It was the most shameful moment in the history of presidential addresses in that beautiful chamber. In what was supposed to be a unifying moment for our country, Democrat members of Congress instead screamed at the President of the United States, who was just overwhelmingly reelected by their constituents, walked out of the chamber, and worst of all, they disrespected the American people. Democrats didn't stand to keep men out of women's sports. They couldn't even clap for a girl who got her head smashed in by a man on a volleyball court. Democrats didn't stand for an innocent and beautiful child who is surviving brain cancer. They opposed eliminating taxes on tips and Social Security. They didn't stand in favor of cutting taxes for hardworking Americans. They couldn't even clap for two mothers whose daughters were killed by illegal aliens. One of the only things that could get Democrats off their feet last night was cheering for Ukraine, not for America. Last night was a very clarifying moment for our country. The Democrats exposed themselves as the party of insanity and hate, the party that wants to put America last. They've allowed their Trump derangement syndrome to stop them from celebrating America and our people, and we will not allow them to forget that. And it's not just the Democrat Party. The mainstream media still doesn't get it. Last night, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th. And CNN's first chyron out of the speech called it divisive. President Trump wasn't divisive. The Democrats were. And CNN was proven wrong by their own viewers, 69% of whom, in a post-speech poll, said they had a positive reaction to the president's speech. It's sad and frankly pathetic that Democrats and liberals in the legacy media continue to allow their hatred for the president to override their love for our country. But nevertheless, the president will continue to unify this nation through policies that are grounded in common sense and that uplift all Americans. We have an individual in our new media seat today, Mary Margaret Olohan, who is the Daily Wire's first ever White House correspondent. Congratulations, Mary Margaret. The Daily Wire was founded 10 years ago by Ben Shapiro. The Daily Wire now has over 1 million paid subscribers, a monthly network reach of 138 million, and has evolved into a leading conservative multimedia giant. They are now the 5th largest podcast network in the world and home to some of the top-ranked shows. With that, I will take your questions, and Mary Margaret, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you so much, Karoline. It's great to be here.
Thanks.
So I had 2 questions, if that's okay. The first
Sure.
on last night and the second on Maine. You talked about behavior from Democrat lawmakers, a lot of disruptions, and I just wanted to kind of go back to that. We saw Democrat lawmakers not stand for Laken Riley, for Peyton McNabb, for the son of a slain police officer and 13-year-old cancer survivor. What are the optics of that nationally, just in terms of not just the people who were in the room last night, but across the nation? And also, was President Trump expecting this type of behavior when he was crafting his speech?
So I gave a quote to one of the media outlets in this room yesterday that Democrats behaving like children would be the least surprising thing of the night. And unfortunately, that quote did turn out to be true. I think the president and everyone, frankly, was surprised by the Democrats refusing to stand for not the president's policies, because frankly, we expected that, but for the everyday Americans who President Trump was shining a light on their stories. Mark Fogel, for instance, an American school teacher who was detained by the Russians. President Trump freed him. If Joe Biden had done that, they all would have been on their feet, but because of it what came from President Trump, they weren't. So we think it's very sad, but we're very proud of the president today, and the American people are the people that this president cares about most, and the reviews are in, and everybody loved his speech.
Thank you. And then on Maine, we know that the governor of Maine has really pushed back against the president's executive order saying that boys should not be in girls' sports. I spoke with a lawmaker from Maine this morning who told me she'd been censured by state lawmakers for calling a man and speaking up on this. What is the next move for the White House in this battle to protect the integrity of women's sports?
Yeah, well, the Department of Education has sued the state of Maine. As you know, there's ongoing litigation. The president has made a commitment to ensure that states are being held accountable if they continue to allow men in women's sports, which he believes is an egregious violation of taxpayer dollars. And so that fight continues, and the president won't back down. Again, this is a common sense policy. 80% of the American people, including more than 60% of Democrats, do not want men in women's sports. So the president will stand by this commitment. Thank you. Gabe, good to see you in here.
Good to see you, Karoline. A couple questions. One, can you confirm that the president held talks with the big three automakers today, speaking about potentially delaying tariffs?
I can confirm, and I'm glad that you asked, because the president sent me out here with a statement directly from him on this. I saw it was reported earlier today by Bloomberg News, and he wanted me to share this with all of you. We spoke with the big three auto dealers. We are going to give a 1-month exemption on any autos coming through USMCA. Reciprocal tariffs will still go into effect on April 2nd, but at the request of the companies associated with USMCA, the president is giving them an exemption for 1 month so they are not at an economic disadvantage. So the three companies that he spoke to are Stellantis, Ford, and General Motors. They requested the call, they made the ask, and the president is happy to do it. It's a 1-month exemption.
And the president just posted on social media that he had spoken with Prime Minister Trudeau. He says he's not satisfied with what the Prime Minister has said when it comes to fentanyl, but less than 1%, as you know, less than 1% of the fentanyl seized last year was in the northern border. What else does Canada need to do?
Well, the president did just put out a statement on his call with the governor, Justin Trudeau, as he calls him, of Canada. And he said that he was not pleased, as you said. He said it's not good enough. He told Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that directly. The call ended in a somewhat friendly manner, as the president said, but he's not going to stop standing up for the American people. And to answer your question directly when it comes to fentanyl, for the last 4 years, unfortunately, our neighbors to the north and the south, Canada and Mexico respectively, have allowed America to be a dumping ground, not just for illegal aliens, but for illegal, poisonous, deadly fentanyl, which is now the #1 killer of young people in this country aged 18 to 34. Through the northern border in Canada, in last fiscal year alone, there was enough fentanyl seized to kill 4.8 billion people. And that number is up 2,050% from 2023, the year before. So there's been more than a 2,000% increase in illegal fentanyl seizure at the northern border. Why? Because Canada is allowing that fentanyl to come to the United States. The president sees these numbers. He thinks about the lives that are lost. And everybody in this room, I'm sure, everybody watching at home, everybody across the country knows someone in our lives who has been killed at the hands of this deadly poison. There needs to be repercussions for that. The president feels very strongly about it.
Karoline, respectfully, it's just 43 pounds that were found last year. That's less than a carry-on suitcase. Is that a lot of fentanyl compared to, say, Mexico, where the vast majority of the fentanyl is brought in through Mexico, not Canada? So what else does Canada need to do?
Well, I just told you, last year alone, there was a 2,000% increase in illegal fentanyl. You're asking me for what the president's justification is for these tariffs. It's not up to you. You're not the president, Gabe. And frankly, I think it's a little bit disrespectful to the families in this country who have lost loved ones at the hands of this deadly poison. If you talk to them, and this president has, they are grateful that they finally have a president who is standing up to both Canada and Mexico, and most importantly, to China as well. The president added an additional 10% tariff on China because this deadly poison is being produced in that country. It's being distributed through our neighbors, and there needs to be consequences for that, period. Peter.
Thank you, Karoline. If the U.S. has a longstanding policy that we do not negotiate with terrorists, then why is the U.S. now negotiating directly and for the first time ever with Hamas?
Well, when it comes to the negotiations that you're referring to, first of all, the special envoy who's engaged in those negotiations does have the authority to talk to anyone. Israel was consulted on this matter. And look, dialogue and talking to people around the world to do what's in the best interest of the American people is something that the president has proven is what he believes is good faith effort to do what's right for the American people.
Is it just about the hostages, Or are they also talking about the president's plan to take over Gaza?
These are ongoing talks and discussions. I am not going to detail them here. There are American lives at stake. I would defer you to the Department of State for further details, but I'm not going to get into those talks here at this podium.
We know that some officials here were miffed that Zelensky showed up last week without a suit for his meeting in the Oval Office. But Elon Musk never wears a suit in
He
there.
did last night.
So what is the dress code?
Well, Elon Musk wore a suit last night. I'm sure you saw it.
Was he spooked by the Zelensky, Zelensky getting kicked out?
No, I don't think so. I'm just pointing out that he did wear a suit last night, and I think the president liked that very much, and he looked great. Speaking of the president, he just passed me a note while I'm standing here. He wanted me to hold this up. This is the poll that I cited, the CBS YouGov poll that shows that 76% of those who watched the president's speech last night approved of his speech. And so it goes to my earlier point that I made in my monologue about how incredibly sad it is that we have a modern-day Democrat Party who is so severely out of touch with the American public. This is a great poll. The ultimate poll, though, came on November 5th when the president won by an overwhelming margin that he spoke about last night. Democrats weren't happy to hear that either. Ouija.
Thank you, Karoline. Back on tariffs, last night President Trump said there will be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. Can you put a dollar figure amount on how much the average American family should expect to pay as this disturbance? And why should Americans be okay with that when so many are already struggling to pay the bills?
Well, first of all, last night, the president told the truth. And he was realistic, and he level set with the American people. And I think, frankly, it's very refreshing, and everybody in this room should be very grateful that we have a president who tells the truth about the reality of the economic situation that we are in, unlike the previous president who lied to everybody's faces, saying inflation was transitory, saying it was under control, saying that the border was secure, when none of that was true. So the president is being frank and honest, and the American people elected this president to have monumental reform and change, including rebuilding our manufacturing base in this country, standing up to foreign nations who have been ripping off our country for decades. And that requires a little bit of disruption. That requires a lot of effort and work that this president is focused on doing. With that said, as the president said last night, his administration is wholeheartedly committed, of course, to ending the inflation nightmare caused by the Biden administration. Look at the deregulation efforts. Look at the president's push last night in his speech for Congress to pass tax cuts, to end taxes on Social Security and overtime pay for hardworking Americans, end taxes on tips. We need Congress to get that done because that's going to put more money back into the pockets of the American people. And I didn't even mention energy. Look at the president's approach and focus on unleashing the might of our energy industry. We know that's the #1 driver of inflation. He's been slashing back a lot of the burdensome regulation from the previous administration to unleash our energy industry here at home, which will drive down costs. He said he is committed to making America affordable again. He did it in his first term, and Americans can trust him to do it again.
President Trump has made clear, Karoline, that he loves tariffs, but the stock market does not. How does he factor that into his decision making?
Well, the president does love tariffs. He said it's one of his favorite words in the English dictionary, and he believes in tariffs because they'll ultimately make America rich again. They're going to raise revenue. They're going to help us pay down our debt. Most importantly, they're going to bring American jobs here back home. So I think for folks on Wall Street who may be concerned, look at what this president did for you in his first term. Wall Street boomed. Stock market boomed. The president expects that to happen again. But most importantly, Main Street is going to boom. And that's why the president has this whole of government economic approach, which includes tax cuts, tariffs, regulation cuts, and an energy industry that will bring down costs for American consumers. Sure, Monica.
Thank you, Karoline. You mentioned not one Democrat senator voted to protect women's sports from males. Not one Democrat congressman or congresswoman stood to applaud or support protecting women's spaces and sports at the president's joint session to Congress last night, as you articulately mentioned at the beginning. So I'm wondering, what message is that sending to not only young women who are competing in these sports across the country, but also to the parents of these young girls?
Yeah. I think the message that Americans should take away from last night is that they have a president in the Oval Office who is committed to doing what's right for them, especially women and girls across the country. And I think it's very ironic, thank you for bringing up the point about women, that Democrat women were wearing pink to support our fellow females, yet they couldn't stand, again, for a young woman who was almost killed and severely injured by a man on the volleyball court. They couldn't stand for the mothers of two beautiful young women whose lives were taken tragically at the hands of illegal people. So you can't say you're the party of women and then support men and women's sports and not stand up for basic law and order and immigration reform that will protect women in this country. That's what President Trump is doing. He's the president for women. Lindsay, good to see you.
Thank you, Karoline. Good to see you. So, speaking of tariffs, China said yesterday that they're ready for any kind of war with the U.S. Because of these tariffs that have been placed on them. And a Chinese spokesperson also said that the tariffs would not lead to a resolution of U.S. concerns about fentanyl originating in China. Can you speak to how the administration is planning on responding to that?
Well, I think Secretary Hegseth has responded to that this morning. He said that America will always be prepared to defend itself, especially under the leadership of this president in the Oval Office. And that certainly remains true. Again, when it comes to tariffs, the president has been very tough on China, not just now with 20% and more with the reciprocal tariffs that will hit on April 2nd. But look at what he did in his first term. There were billions of dollars worth of tariffs that he implemented on China. And it's quite telling that the previous administration did not rescind those tariffs because they realized the value that they had in not only deterring China, but also raising revenue here in the United States. Rachel.
Thanks, Caroline. Just a quick follow-up, two quick follow-ups on tariffs. The president mentioned a little disturbance during his remarks yesterday. The CEO of Target says that consumers will likely see prices go up on everything from strawberries to bananas to avocados. How long should Americans expect to pay higher prices? Are we talking a week, a couple of days, a few months?
Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I can assure the American people is that this president and this administration is doing everything they can. And I would remind you and everybody else in this room that it's because of the previous administration's economic policies that Americans were left with record high inflation. Inflation throughout Joe Biden's entire 48 months in office was at or above 3%. It hit record highs, as you know. And there's a whole list of what the Biden economic disaster this president was left to clean up. It's been a month, but he's working hard every single day to do just that.
One quick follow-up on the carve-out. Sorry to cut you off there. The U.S. imported $43 million worth of eggs from Canada. I know you mentioned some of the exemptions when it comes to automakers. Will there be any other carve-outs, including for eggs? We know prices are soaring for Americans.
The president is open to hearing about additional exemptions. He always has open dialogue, and he'll always do, what's right, what he believes is right for the American people. But again, as for the egg crisis in this country, the president is wholeheartedly committed to ensuring we're increasing our egg supply, and we're also bringing down cost. And Secretary Rollins has been all over this issue. She comes from an agricultural background and family. That's why she's leading that very important department. She wrote an amazing op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. She's been all over the media talking about her plan. She has a real plan. The president endorses it. And he even, gave her an off-the-prompter shout-out last night to say, Brooke, I'm counting on you. It's an important issue. And this White House is working with Secretary of Agriculture every single day to address this issue. Sure. Jordan.
Thanks, Caroline. So what does it say that the Democrats, while they couldn't stand for Americans or stand for victims, they stood for war and clapped for war and clapped for 5 more years of war?
Yeah, the president addressed that last night, I think, when he called out Senator Elizabeth Warren and said that, again, as I said in my opening speech, very telling that the Democrats refused to clap for American people and American interests and American priorities, but they did clap for the country of Ukraine, which, by the way, the president's working very hard to end that war. So Democrats should be applauding him for actually doing something about it.
Follow up on that if I can. You've spoken recently about how what happened in the Oval Office last week gave Americans an inside look into behind-the-scenes discussions with Zelensky. Is this how he treated Joe Biden and just treated him disrespectfully and received billions of dollars?
Well, it's a very interesting question. I don't know if anybody in here asked my predecessor who stood at this podium about that, but there was a report from NBC News that President Biden also got increasingly frustrated with President Zelensky when he was handing out blank checks and President Zelensky kept asking for more. Joe Biden was quite frustrated with that. So again, as I've said repeatedly, Friday revealed the frustrations that this administration has had in closed-door negotiations with the Ukrainians. However, President Zelensky did put out a statement yesterday, which we believe is a positive step forward. And National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has been talking to his Ukrainian counterparts. And so we're in the midst of this, and we'll see what happens next. Caitlin.
Thanks, Karoline. I have two questions. One on the reprieve that is being granted to these three automakers for 1 month on the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. How did the president settle on 1 month?
Mm-hmm. The reciprocal tariffs will go into effect on April 2nd, and he feels strongly about that no matter what, no exemption, so that's where the 1 month comes from.
Does he expect them to be able to shift production within a month?
He told them that they should get on it, start investing, start moving, shift production here to the United States of America, where they will pay no tariff. That's the ultimate goal.
And on the conversations between the White House and the Ukrainians and the letter that President Trump revealed last night that he got from President Zelensky, Director Ratcliffe said today that the president has paused also intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Is that temporary or is that permanent?
I believe what the National Security Council told me in regards to that was that they paused or they are reconsidering the funding for Ukraine, as you saw, the pause on the funding. As for intelligence matters, I would refer you to either the National Security Council or the CIA as well.
But they're considering lifting or reinstating the military aid going to Ukraine, which they paused this
Again,
week.
it's a pause for a review.
Follow up on that.
Sure.
The president read parts of the letter that he received last night from President Zelensky. Can you give us a sense of when President Trump now plans to sign that minerals deal after receiving that letter?
Those talks are happening as we speak. I just saw the National Security Advisor. He's working very hard on it. I believe he was going into the Oval Office to give the president an update on where this stands. But again, the president is committed to a peace deal. He wants to see this war end. And I think that President Zelensky's message, which he also shared on X as well, is a positive sign in the right direction.
The president also said that the United States was reclaiming the Panama Canal. The president of Panama this morning, or at some point today, said that President Trump was lying. Wanted to get your response to that, and also curious if the president had a reason for not specifically mentioning Blackrock last night when he was praising the company that is buying canals or ports around the Panama.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Panama has seen what's going on with their own canal, but as you just mentioned, Blackrock is now interested in investing and taking over the two ends of the port, which is very important because the president was very vocal several weeks ago about the need to ensure that China is not controlling the Panama Canal. This is a very important place for the United States of America. We also saw that the Panama Canal lifted fees on our U.S. naval ships that are going in and out of the canal. That's a win for the United States of America. And the president will continue to ensure that the Chinese government, the CCP, cannot be infiltrated in the Western Hemisphere and certainly not in the Panama Canal, which is a very important place for our country. Dasha.
The president continues to call the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, Governor of Canada. I'm curious what he means by that and if there are any plans that are moving forward with trying to make Canada the 51st state. And I have a follow-up on the economy as well.
Sure. Well, the president put that in his True Social account, or his True Social post earlier today. He feels strongly that it would be very beneficial for the Canadian people to be the 51st state of the United States. They wouldn't be paying for these tariffs. They'd have much lower taxes if they were part of our great country.
Caroline, on the economy, you and I traveled the country during the campaign. This is an issue that so many voters decided to cast their ballots on, and they voted for President Trump. He has started to have that realistic conversation with the American people, that disturbance comment last night. But I'm curious if you can be real with Americans right now as all of these factors are playing out. are things potentially going to get worse before they get better?
Look, I've now been asked and answered this same question just given to me in different verbiage of 3 different times, and I will answer it again in an effort of transparency to the American people, because this is an important issue and the American people, this president understands that it is. And again, that's why in his joint address to Congress last night, he addressed this issue with a realistic and honest approach. He talked about what this administration is doing to unleash American energy and to make America affordable again, and this administration is wholeheartedly committed to doing it. And I would remind the American public that the first-term record of this president speaks volumes. That's why they reelected him, because they know that he can fix our broken economy, and it's very, very broken from the previous administration. Stephen.
Thank you, Karoline. I've got 2 questions, one on press access, the other on fentanyl and tariffs.
Sure.
On press access, your predecessor, Karine Jean-Pierre, who presided over many novel press access restrictions, criticized the recent changes to the press pool made by your office. She said in an interview, quote, "What we're looking at is what North Korea is doing." What's your response to that? And can you say anything to allay concerns that unfavorable coverage will be punished in this new press pool system?
I think that's the same individual who said from this podium numerous times that the commander-in-chief was mentally and physically up for the job, which we knew was a lie. Many people in this room knew it was a lie. Many of you were admonished for asking questions about that truth. So when it comes to truth and transparency, this administration, this White House is setting the example. This president is taking far more questions than his predecessor, Joe Biden, did on a daily basis, and that will continue.
And on fentanyl and tariffs, fentanyl produced largely in China has killed 334,000 Americans over 5 years. According to CDC data, that's about 1 in every 1,000 Americans. President Trump has cited this for applying new tariffs to Canada, Mexico, and China. But in addition to China's talk about being ready for any kind of war, they said yesterday, the foreign ministry said that, quote, "The fentanyl issue is a flimsy excuse to raise U.S. tariffs," and, quote, "The U.S., not anyone else, is responsible for the fentanyl crisis." So what's the response to China that the talk of fentanyl is just an excuse for tariffs? And what does that say about the resolution?
Well, of course, the country that is getting very rich off of distributing this deadly poison to American citizens is going to say that. Again, the president knows where the American people stand on this issue. Fentanyl overdoses. Dasha brought up all of us campaigning all across the country. They talked about inflation. They also talked about the border, the illegal immigrants that we're pouring through, but also these deadly drugs. And again, the president keeps in mind those families every single day when he is making these tough decisions. But it's a necessary decision, and he's no longer going to allow the United States of America to be a dumping ground for illegal immigrants and for illegal drugs that are killing our nation's people. This is the #1 leading cause of death in our country, and there needs to be action taken to ensure that that cannot continue. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Karoline.
Do we know what auto brands are actually exempted? So Honda.
Stay with us, and we'll bring you more news right after this break.